Good evening. I hereby call to order the action session of the Board of School Commissioners for Thursday, November 15th. This evening, there'll be no color guard due to the inclement weather we experienced this morning. Would you please stand and join me in reciting our Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Mulholland, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Arnold.
Here.
Commissioner Bentley. Secretary Gore.
Here.
Commissioner Hoops. Vice President Moore.
Here.
President O'Connor.
Here.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Mulholland. We'll now adopt the agenda for tonight's meeting. The agenda was reviewed on Tuesday and reflects all necessary modifications or additions. Reviewing the modified agenda, are there any requests for changes to the agenda as presented? Hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved. Second.
It has been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The agenda is adopted. We'll now move to section 2 of the agenda, which is normally where we have student performances. As I referenced, the weather caused cancellation of school, so there will not be a student performance tonight. Next item, tonight we'd like to honor several of our community partners for their dedicated support for IPS, and specifically our students with special needs. I'll ask Dr. Fairby to join me at the front of the stage and Commissioner Sullivan to introduce our honorees.
Each month during our board action section, we like to take a moment to honor a few of our parent and/or community partners who help make our IPS school community so wonderful. Tonight, we have several honorees we'd like to acknowledge in conjunction with Project Search. Project Search is an immersive program for high school students providing employment and education opportunities for final year high school students with significant disabilities. The goal of the program is paid employment for each graduate. As we celebrate the 10th anniversary of Project Search, we'd like to recognize two key partners who have been a part of the program since the start: Easter Seals, Crossroads, and Community Hospital East. Accepting on behalf of Easter Seals Crossroads is Keith Fox, coordinator of transition programs and the lead employment consultant throughout the entire 10 years. Thank you, Mr. Fox. Accepting on behalf of Community Hospital East is Deborah Whitfield, Manager of Diversity and Inclusion. And thank you again to Mr. Fox, Ms. Whitfield, and the teams from your Easter Seals, Crossroads, and Community Hospital East for your service and dedication to Indianapolis Public Schools and Project Search.
Moving on to section 3, opening comments. Does any commissioner wish to offer comments this evening? Fine, we'll move to the public comment section. I think we have a total of 6 commenters this evening. Most of them are for a segment of the presentation which will come later, but I'm going to go ahead and give the public comment rules before then, and we'll bring people up. I think there's one commenter, right? Is that Joe for this point? We will receive public comment from those individuals who signed up to offer comments to the board this evening. I will remind our speakers that you're allowed 3 minutes to offer comments to the board. A timer will start when you begin, and I ask that you briefly conclude your remarks when you hear the timer go off. Comments should be directed to the board collectively, should not be abusive or disruptive, and should not address a topic that might be of a confidential nature or that would compromise the impartiality of the board. I will also remind our speakers that while the board is happy to receive public comment, we will not respond or answer any questions at this time. If you have signed up to speak on a particular topic, as I said on tonight's agenda, you'll be called to speak when that item is before the board. Please come to the podium and begin your comments when your name is called. Mr. Bramblesbacher?
Thank you, sir. The first public comment, and only one for general public comment this evening, is Nathan Harris, please.
Thank you, Board, for having me and for giving me an opportunity to speak before you. And just grateful again for being here and an opportunity to speak on behalf of students of color and low-income students, as I have in the past few meetings. The topic today that I'm interested in pushing or pursuing is inclusivity and equity. And from my observations, this is an area that I believe that IPS can become more stronger in. I find that over the years, despite the fact that we do have many low-income and many low-income students of color that graduate from this great institution, that I believe that if the school system adopts greater equity-minded practices, that the students will benefit more, and that the outcomes in reference to graduation and students moving on and articulating to higher and bigger and better post-secondary education opportunities will be increased significantly. So what I propose is that not for me to continue to bash you over the head sort of symbolically about this issue, but for you to pursue audit that is proven, to find out where you stand in reference to equity, and to, after you find out where you are, put together a task force that will help you to get there. I think that ultimately these types of practices are not just good for the people that are suffering from inequality, but for the society as a whole. And I believe that these practices should be driven fully by love for the people that are experiencing the inequality. And so if you need information on sources where you can get an audit and direction on this issue, please contact me. I'll be more than happy to provide some direction.
That concludes general public
Thank you.
comment. The remainder is agenda specific on item 6.02.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Harris. The items included on the consent agenda were reviewed at our agenda review session on Tuesday and reflect all necessary modifications. Are there any questions or requests to move an item from the consent agenda? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved. Second.
It has been motioned and seconded. Any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries. Having no board reports, I'll now turn the agenda over to Dr. Farabee for superintendent reports.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you, President O'Connor. There are 3 superintendent reports for this evening. The first is our monthly spotlight. This month, we're pleased to feature Crispus Attucks High School. We have opportunity to hear from Principal Lauren Franklin, who will highlight the career academies at Crispus Attucks High School, some of their focus areas for the school year and goals, and what student life has been this new school year and some of their community partners. So, commissioners, please join me in welcome Ms. Franklin to the podium. Ms. Franklin, it's a pleasure to hear from you and the great work happening at Crispus Attucks.
So thank you. Good evening, Commissioners and Superintendent Farabee. I did want to just take a moment to introduce one of my many talented staff members. I have one of my assistant principals with me, George Sims, and so he's here in the event that I stumble in any way. He can help me out. So again, good evening, and I just wanted to share a little bit about Crispus Attucks High School. As you know, we changed the name back to Crispus Attucks High School this year. It used to be Medical Magnet, but we wanted to make certain that we included both of our academies. It didn't just have a slant or a bend towards one academy in particular. So we want to just talk about a little bit about who we are, and then again hear about our career academies, what we're particularly focusing on for the 18-19 school year, highlight some of our community partnerships, and then also talk through what it means to be a student at Crispus Attucks. So for those who don't know, Crispus Attucks was named after the first person to lose their life in the Revolutionary War. He was an African-American hero. And when the school was opened early on, then the school board tried to name it the Thomas Jefferson High School, but the African-American community in Indianapolis did push back. They wanted it to be named after an African-American, and so the name Crispus Attucks was selected. When we take a look at, again, additional history, it was designed, it came from a time period where the Ku Klux Klan ran the school board in the city of Indianapolis, and so they decided to take all of the African-American students from all of their high schools and force them to attend Crispus Attucks. My own grandfather was going to be a junior at Arsenal Tech, and he was forced to leave Arsenal Tech and attend Crispus Attucks. So again, Crispus Attucks is very near and dear to my heart, as all of my family members attended there. One of the things that made Attucks such a unique and special place was the teaching staff. And so the teaching staff, everyone held a master's degree or higher. And that was very unusual to find in a high school setting. But again, given the time period, then we had a lot of very well-educated African Americans, but they couldn't find jobs other places, and so they began to teach the young people at that time. So we've been regarded, the school, throughout the years for many, many academic successes, musical talents, and basketball championships. It should be noted also that Crispus Attucks is on the National Register of Historical Places, as well as we're the only IPS school to have a documentary created about its rich heritage. And if you have not had an opportunity to see that, WFYI production, it's called Attucks, the School That Opened the City, and you'll find a lot more in-depth information around the school. So it's just an amazing place to be, a rich legacy, a rich heritage. And we make sure that our students understand and feel that. So our students have the opportunity to watch the documentary every single year. That's how one of the ways that we acclimate new staff members and new students to our school so that they understand where they are and why it's such a special and unique place to be. There we go. So where we are, who we are as of today, just our current demographics. We have right now just over 1,100 students, and that's just a breakdown you see by grade level. 62% of our population is African American. Our Hispanic population has grown steadily every single year. We're now at 31% Hispanic, 4% Caucasian, and 3% multiracial. We were able, and we're very proud to say that we did, through the high school consolidation and the reinvention of the high schools, we were able to retain more than 95% of our students wanted to stay with Crispus Attucks and our programs there. So that was something we really worked hard to make sure that our families and our students felt comfortable there. We've increased in size by approximately 450 students this year, as well as approximately 35 staff members by adding and increasing programs and then just adding the number of students. We clearly needed more staff members. So we have 2 career academies at Crispus Attucks. We have our Health Science Academy, and in our Health Science Academy, we have 4 pathways. Our biomedical science pathway is basically a curriculum from the project Lead the Way. So it's pretty turnkey, but our teacher goes and gets training. It's a 2-week training that they do every summer. But the curriculum is fascinating. Our students love it. They study an individual who has died by the name of Anna Garcia. And then students have to determine how she died. And so it's basically a year-long CSI course. And through that study, they look at diabetes. They just look at a variety of different things that can go wrong in an individual's body, and and make that determination about how did they die. So our kids, once they get into that program, they love it. They're fascinated by it, and it just really hooks them. And that's what we want. We also have health informatics as another pathway. And this is a pathway that's unique to Crispus Attucks. There's no other school in the state of Indiana that offers health informatics. We wanted to do something, again, within the health science field, but not all of our students, we wanted to acknowledge not all of our students are meant to deal with the body, the physical, the blood and the bodily fluids. They don't all like that. And some of them more are math and data-oriented people. And so health informatics, again, this is a very large and growing field within the health science industry. And so we wanted to make sure that we were preparing students in a variety of ways, not just kids who want to be nurses or doctors. Our nursing program, we're really proud of our nursing program right now. So our students are able to get their CNA certification through the state of Indiana. So this is a free program for our students, where we know that if you go back after high school to try to obtain a CNA, it can cost anywhere upwards to several $1,000s to get a CNA license. And so it's really great that our students can get that while they're still in high school. So we have students in the CNA program. They learn all the didactic pieces, the classroom piece, and they learn the things like all of the many steps to hand washing. Didn't know there's over 30 steps to washing your hands. But there are when you have to do that. And then they go and move on to their clinical experiences. And so we partner with American Senior Communities. And our students go there and they have to obtain a certain number of clinical hours before they're able to sit for the state exam. So last year it was our brand new first time doing it last year. And we had 100% of our students who took the test that passed the test. And so we were really pleased with that. Nursing is our most popular pathway currently right now. So we can't squeeze everybody in there, even though we'd love to do that. But yeah, we're looking to how can we grow the nursing, because there's such a demand for it from our students. Lastly, we have our physical therapy program. And we have this for those students who really are interested in being an athletic trainer or some sort of sports trainer, again, as well as just being PT or OT or those types. And so this is biomedical science and physical therapy really give a great foundation for those kids who would like to be doctors or some sort of a practitioner. So those are our Health Science Academy pathways as of now. Our second pathway, which is brand new, our second academy, which is brand new this year, is our Teaching, Learning, and Leading Academy, and that has 2 different pathways. So we have an early childhood pathway, or early childhood education, and then our teaching professions. And so with our early childhood education, that's child development. And so those students, we partner with Day Early Learning, we partner with St. Mary's, and kids are going to and getting and sitting in those preschool and those daycare classrooms, as well as we have the little babies. If you came to the Showcase of Schools, you saw a baby on the table, and lots of people thought it was real. But they look real, and so kids are walking around with the carriers, and they're having to take care of an actual infant, if you will, and they cry during class, and they wet themselves and all of those pieces. And so kids really have to understand and learn how to take care of an infant. Teaching professions, this one is incredibly important. And I have to say, this is not quite as popular yet as we would like for it to be. But this is, as you all know, we know that there's a national teaching shortage. And so we want to see if we can make the teaching profession a bit more attractive to our young people. And so we have some dynamic staff members who are teaching in this academy. And so we are hoping that to draw more students into this academy. We also have a freshman academy, and though a freshman academy is not a career academy, but it helps to orient and acclimate students to high school. What does it mean to be a successful high school student? So we're really proud of the work that we do with our freshman academy. We worked with an organization called SREB, High Schools That Work, from the South. But he came in last year and really started working with our team of teachers and talk through what are our beliefs about teaching and how do we make students feel really comfortable in a high school setting. Like there is a difference between a middle school and a high school. Like it gets very serious, it gets real in high school. So one of the things that we're able to do, we have what's called a MESS team, which stands for Math, English, Social Studies, and Science. So that basically means that the same group of teachers teach the same group of students. And they're able to really provide a lot of solid supports around what they're providing for students. And so they're able to have the same exact consequences. They're able to have the same exact standards and expectations in all of their classrooms. And so students benefit from that because they're having teachers. So if they're struggling in a math class, then their math, English, social studies, and science teacher all sit down with those students together as a team and address those issues. And our students have really responded well to that. The teachers meet on a weekly basis to discuss any students who need various supports. They meet with parents. They take a look at their assessments, and they do a lot of grouping and projects together. So it also has helped with as far as our retention of teachers, because we know that they like to work together. That collaboration and that collegiality goes a long way also. The other thing that we do in our freshman academy, we have 2 teams, and we have those team competitions. And so because we're really trying to make certain that students understand the high expectations that we have, then they compete with everything from attendance to grades, who has the highest GPA, which team, and so on and so forth. So it's really been helpful. And then lastly, we do that mastery-based learning. So it's more important for students to master a standard as opposed to just get it done. And so it's that 80% mastery. So every assignment, if they don't receive mastery on it, then they have to redo it. So it's all about the redo and the revise. And so we want to make certain that they get in the habit of doing a great job on their work from the very beginning. So that's been really successful so far with our population. Our focus for this school year, we have 3 primary focuses, and we were able to come together over the summer and have a high school institute, and that was incredibly helpful because we had so many new staff members that came on board, so we were able to sit and have those conversations that we normally don't have time to have around what were our expectations, and then how are we going to implement and execute on what we expected of our students. So one of our things that we're working very closely with and very hard to achieve, we wanted to reduce the number of students who need a waiver to graduate. And we're doing that by utilizing the new graduation pathways that the state has laid out for us. So we're taking a look at that. And a couple of things that we're doing, we're meeting with students, making sure that we're educating our families. We've had senior parent meetings and educating them about other paths to graduation. You have to pass the I-STEP test, but if you don't pass that I-STEP test, then here's that alternative with those graduation pathways. And so making certain that students are not relying on a waiver to graduate from high school is a big focus that we have. Another focus that we have is attendance. We have a lot of our students who work. We have I don't have the percentage, but I would easily say half of our student population has an after-school job of some kind. And so a lot of our students work and they have family responsibilities. And so getting them to come to school and come to school on time is a big focus that we have at our building this year. And then lastly, again, because we had so many new students and staff members, we wanted to make sure that there was a community building aspect to our goals. So having them all to participate in some way in a community building event, whether it's our canned food drive that's going on right now, whether it is coming to a basketball game or a football game, whatever it may be, we've just listed out a variety of ways that you can participate in the Crispus Attucks community. We think that that's really important to building the type of school that we would like to see. Here we wanted to just highlight a couple of our community partners that we work with. Our Health Science Advisory Council and our Teaching, Learning, and Leading Advisory Council have been critical in getting those student experiences off the ground. So with our Health Science Advisory Council, we partner with American Senior Communities, who again, our students go for their clinical experiences over there. We also partner with IU School of Medicine. Our students were just there the other week for a mini med school day, which the med school students, they allow our students to shadow them, and then they provide them with a variety of experiences throughout the day. Teaching, Learning, and Leading, We partner with local universities, so we have Butler University, we have Marian University, University of Indianapolis, IUPUI. They all came together and helped us with our curriculum for our new teaching, learning, and leading path or academy. And so they've been really integral and instrumental in helping us get that off the ground and launch that piece, as well as day early learning and the other, the daycare centers. IUPUI, I wanted to highlight that in particular, their SPAN program. So we have roughly 60 students who there are juniors and seniors who go to IUPUI's campus on a daily basis and take college classes. And each one of those students have been awarded a $5,000 scholarship to earn college credits. And so they go, they're selected their sophomore year, so students apply and they have to have a 3.0 GPA or higher, and they apply the second semester of their sophomore year, and then they take classes each semester that they're at Crispus Attucks, their junior year and their senior year as well. So they're able to leave Crispus Attucks with up to, I believe, 18 college credits, and so that's tremendous. I had student loans, you know, and so the fact that these kids can get free college credits in high school is amazing. They have to maintain an A or a B. They can't get anything below a B in order to remain in that program. So they're very driven students, and we're incredibly proud of that program and that partnership. So we have that piece. Also wanted to highlight our partnership with Center for Leadership Development. They're actually right down the street from us, from Crispus Attucks, but they do a lot of great things. We used to send all of our 10th graders there, but as we have grown, then we have to kind of find a different way because Crispus Attucks was overwhelming the programs at CLD. So it's just on a voluntary basis, but we do pay for the students as well as provide transportation for them to attend the programs, the self-discovery program. And that's another way for our students to earn scholarship dollars when they leave our school. Also wanted to highlight our National Alumni Association. We do have an alumni member in the audience. And our alumni are like none other because the alumni love, love, love Crispus Attucks. And I think that's another thing that makes our school so unique is the amount of support from the community that our school receives. We have a PTSA that's very strong. Our parent, teacher, and student association, they meet on a monthly basis, and they are very, very supportive of the programming at our school building. Adult and Child Mental Health Services and Marion County Health Department both provide the mental health services. And I have to say that that's a growing need in our building, so the students who need those services. And so it's really important that we have those organizations to partner with. So those are some of the ones that we wanted to specifically highlight. We also wanted to share just a little bit about student life because obviously academics is the focus, but we know that just that comprehensive high school experience is what we're looking for to make certain that students are well-rounded. And so anything that students are interested in, we want to make certain, if possible, that we're able to provide that for them. And so this is just a very brief list of what we offer at our school, but we do have academic and social clubs. We have a variety of athletics. We have student government, and so we have 4 class officers at each level, and they run class meetings each month for our students, as well as a variety of dances and just the extracurricular activities that the students say they want. And then we're not the VPA school of the 4 high schools, but we do have a phenomenal choir teacher who's working very hard with our choir. They do a great job, as well as a phenomenal band and orchestra instructor too. So if the students, whatever their talent is, we try to make certain that we have something to offer them if they're able to stay after school. We did want to share that we have a long-standing partnership. Has it been 19 years, I think? For the last 19 years, we participated in exchange with 2 schools in Tlaxcala, Mexico. And our students actually just returned from a 2-week visit. They went over fall break, but they had an amazing time. So these are current pictures, and this is just from October 2018 of the students and a variety of different activities they've done. And they will be here in the spring of 2019 for us to host them. We take them around town, let them see the sights. They see the Speedway. They go to the Children's Museum. And they also sit in class. They participate in a lot of the academic activities at our building as well. So we try to show them a great time. They roll out the red carpet for us as a group, and we just really appreciate that opportunity. You all voted and allowed us to go this year, and we just appreciate the opportunity because we think it's just very valuable, a valuable learning experience for our students. And I say, are there any questions?
Very impressive. Thank you for coming and sharing. I just have a couple of questions on the Teaching, Learning, and Leading Academy. In the early childhood component, is there opportunity or any thoughts of getting students certified as CDAs? Is that part of the program?
It is part of the program. It's going to take a little bit of legwork. So this is our first year, and so we have the kind of the early pieces in stage. So I didn't want to announce that that was going to be a definitive for this year, but it definitely is part of the goal. Yes, ma'am.
That's great.
Mhm.
And the second is, back in, I don't want to say when I graduated from high school, but if you wanted to be a teacher, they had what they called student teaching experiences, where you left high school certain periods of the day and went. Is that part of this,
Mhm.
or planning to be part of this?
That also is in the works as well. Yes, because I did that same program. I was at Broad Ripple, and I was in the education magnet my senior year. So yes, that's part of the planning stages. So right now we do have them. So they'll go, for example, to another teacher's class and take a look at their lesson plans and critique lesson plans or do observations of teachers in-house right now. But the plan is for them to actually go out to other schools. Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gore.
I'd just like to say thank you very much in being a proud graduate of Crispus Attucks. We've really grown, and there are some real positive things going on. So thank you both for being here.
Thank you so much.
Commissioner Moore.
Okay, I also, of course, want to say thank you. My mother graduated from there. My daughter graduated from the medical magna-piece, and so she really did benefit from the program where she went to IUPUI, and she was one of the lucky people to get 18 hours, so I didn't have to pay because I got no financial aid either. But what I also wanted to do, wanted to salute you and your assistant principal. As I was looking at the grades of the schools for 2017-2018, I saw that you guys received a B, and I know many people continue to believe that we're not providing quality education for our children, and I want to salute you for what the things that you're doing and let you know that I also see right over there that A school coming from Crispus Attucks, and I truly do appreciate you and all the principals and teachers that we have at IPS.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Principal Franklin and your staff and your team for the great work happening at Crispus Attucks. Commissioners, the next superintendent report is item 6.02, which includes innovation updates, which is a follow-up to a previous conversation that we've had at our October meeting. There are also individuals signed up for public comment, so President O'Connor at the appropriate time will address public comment. But Jamie Vanderwally, who leads the innovation work and serves as our portfolio officer, will provide an update and also introduce partners that have expressed interest in this work.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Farabee, and good evening, commissioners. As Dr. Farabee mentioned, I'm here this evening to provide an update and additional overview of our innovation selection process. In the second part, I'll drill down a little more detail on some of the specific timelines and community engagement elements that were requested at the October board meeting. And then also, as he mentioned, then we'll make sort of a hard pivot, and we have 5 charter partner applicants who are here this evening to do a brief introduction. So I'll start with overviewing the components of our application process that we reintroduced in July and spoke about again in October. So it started with the letter of interest, which is over the summer and into the early fall. And we began conducting those cross-functional interviews I mentioned before, and you can see up there the multiple teams that are engaged in that process. After that interview, applicants are invited to submit their full-length application, and then that same cross-functional team or members of their team takes a step at reviewing that application. Along that same time, we begin having what we call our contract parameters conversation. So we're norming around the elements that are common in all of the innovation agreements, making sure parties are on the same page, and then enter into doing additional ongoing interviews. So at this point, once we have that lengthy application, these interviews are much more detailed and allow us to dig in a layer deeper under what the applicants have presented in their application and gather more information. The next step specific to conversion or restart situations is the community listening session and the conversation with the applicant. What these two steps have in common is that they're facilitated by a third party. It's usually a strong community partner affiliated with the school. Oftentimes they take place at a community institution, sometimes they're at the school. What's different about the two is in the first, the district is there to hear from the community, hear from families who may be affected by any potential change. And in the second, then we introduce the applicant into the atmosphere so they can be the ones to hear also feedback and answer questions that people may have for them. And those two components provide additional data to layer on top of our application and our interviews as we determine a choice of an innovation change for any school. So on this slide, I just want to acknowledge that when I was here in October, there were several questions about how the district views our criteria for entertaining conversion applicants. So I want to acknowledge on the left-hand side of the slide, those are our past and our current criteria that we have used to view applicants and the steps that are involved. And then just kind of, put a pin in it and say our next steps will be to come back to the board to further engage. So the slide says December. Since this was published, I've been told, and Dr. Farabee shared on Tuesday, that we'll be looking to do that in January in the upcoming year. But just to acknowledge that we're taking a deep dive as a team right now, having the conversation around how to add more specificity to these items on the left hand, or do we need to add additional components? And we'll be coming back to the board in subsequent meetings. So this is the part where I want to drill down a little bit more both into the timeline and into community engagement components as was requested in October. So in this slide, we're specifically talking about a conversion application process. So again, that's where an existing IPS school would of their own choosing say, we're interested in exploring a conversion to innovation status. It starts with us having conversations with that principal. We do it on the front end as they want to just learn more about what it could mean for them and then enter into an interview process. And then we start to engage with the staff. And as I have here in that second row, it happens sort of 2 times in 2 layers preliminarily. So the first is once someone has submitted that letter of interest and are moving forward in the application process, we'll go to that staff and just have a process conversation. This is actually at Arlington Woods yesterday, where we just reviewed the timeline, the components. This is what's coming. This is what our process looks like. Here's when we'll know more. And then also go through an FAQ document with them that we've compiled over the years, primarily around human resources components and questions they might have for themselves about the transition to make sure that they're well informed, and then make sure they have our info that can follow up with more questions if they have those. The second piece there, and what I want to note, is that these applications aren't due until January 7th, so even after the winter holiday. The reason for that is that we would expect these applicants to be bringing to us evidence of how they've already begun to engage with the staff in the building, surveyed and heard from parents and their community members, and we want that to be a part of that application. So after we get that on January 7th, then we would go back to the school and do focus groups and interviews with those same staff throughout the rest of the month of January to, again, add additional layers of information to what's presented in the application. Following that is when they're in mid-February, I have the community listening sessions and the community and staff conversations with the applicant sort of running concurrently. So as I mentioned before, as the district convenes the space, we have the conversation with those constituents to add additional information for our selection process. We built in an explicit layer for board members who would like to have conversations with the applicants to get to know them just a little more personally and hear more about what's bringing them to pursue innovation status for their building. And then our desire would be to bring a recommendation, or terms rather in this case, to the board at the February board meeting and pace towards a March innovation agreement. So the next 2 slides, I want to pivot a little and talk specifically about the restart process. And again, this is only in the event that the district would make a recommendation for any school to be restarted. When I was here in October, heard a couple of pieces of clear concern or feedback, primarily around how we are doing SQR a little later this year because of the embargo on the state data, that it greatly compressed the amount of time between when the district would make that determination and when we would try to bring a match to the board. That perhaps it didn't provide for enough time for in-depth community engagement and feedback. So a couple points I want to make here. One is that I think when I was here in October, I may have made it sound a little too much like we don't begin that engagement until after that January 25th public announcement of restart, which is not the case. And so I wanted to take us a step back And what I've done here on this slide is on the left-hand slide, that's really the components that you saw whenever I was here in October. That's unchanged. But on the right-hand side, and more of the robin eggs blue, is where I detail the community engagement components that would run alongside those selection elements. So as soon as the district makes the determination that our suggested intervention for a school would be a restart, which would be either the week of January 7th or January 14th, we'd speak to that principal immediately. We're not going to hold on to the information. We'll go immediately to the person most affected by it and then cascade it from there. So after we've had the conversation with the principal, we move immediately to have that same announcement and conversation with the staff, then with families, then with known community partners. And that's all before it goes public on board docs on January 25th. So we've had several weeks where we're already engaging with those who'd be most impacted by the decision. Then it's after that goes public when we have those larger group meetings, the listening sessions with the families and community, and the conversations with the applicants. So it didn't, on this slide, we didn't change when the applicant would be asked to submit their part 2 of the application. That still doesn't happen until after it's widely shared with the public, because we want to make sure that our families and our communities and the folks that are, again, most closely affected by any potential change are the ones that we're speaking to first. So we're running the community listening sessions, conversations with the applicant then throughout the first and then second and third weeks of February, respectively. And then again, building in explicit time where if any board member would like to meet with the applicants to learn about, what's bringing them to this and their vision for the school, they're available to do so. And then would be hoping to make a recommendation to the board in February. The February and the March board dates are in red there, as I'll highlight that on the next slide, we're introducing a potential change for another timeline that could work, but those are obviously some key dates. I think what I also didn't talk about in October that I want to point out now is engagement doesn't stop after we've made the recommendation for a match or even after the contract has come to the board. It just looks different. So even after we've suggested a match, we think we found a good partner, those meetings continue, introducing the partner to all of the community partners and getting really in depth with that selected party would still continue. And then after a contract comes to the board, that's when the partner themselves can deeply engage with all of the real mechanics of what it would take to successfully transition a school. So examples of that would be in engaging with families very concretely around who they are and what they bring. Also, the other changes that really we don't put in motion until after a contract comes, things like what would the calendar year be, would school start times rather change, will the uniform change, all of those pieces that will make parents feel even more well informed about a transition for their school. So based on what we heard in October, we did a lot of thinking about, would there be another way, and then what would the pros and cons be of making any switch in the timeline. One thing we could do if the concern was really that we don't have enough time to hear and to engage before we bring a suggested match would be to shift the contract a month later, actually bring a contract in April instead of in March. So on this slide, it's really anything below that red line that is changing, and for the sake of summary, it really just gives us an additional 4 to 5 weeks in order to do those front-end engagement components that I've already described on the other slide. So we can lengthen out either the amount of time between the community listening sessions or add a third one instead of doing what we'll always do, at least 2, to gather more data if we felt like we needed it, just allow some more time there. The trade-off in our eyes that we see, and why I've sort of highlighted the April through July, is then once we have, if we bring a contract to the board, that would then give the partner less time to really get the school set up and start to make those concrete transitions. And so, we gain some and we lose some in both of those scenarios. I'm going to pause there, as I wonder if folks do have questions or feedback based on these 2 slides.
Commissioner Arnold.
I just want to understand the process as it unfolds. So anyone, any charter or a current IPS school or someone who wants to take over a failing school can apply. If they apply, do they go through the whole process, or how are I don't want to say weeded out, but how does it get to the candidates that are presented to the board?
Right. Great
How
question.
are they eliminated, or are they eliminated?
We didn't eliminate anyone this year. We have eliminated in the past, and it could really happen at any of these steps. So in the past, we've eliminated at the letter of interest after initial conversation, either because it was really just a letter of interest, it wasn't a letter of intent, it wasn't really of as much interest to the party as they thought it was when they first put in the letter. Sometimes after the interview has happened, we've had people submit application and not make it through, really at any stage. Mhm.
So throughout the process, there's opportunities for people to be eliminated from
Yes.
consideration.
Yes,
But this year, that's
Not
not
yet.
the case.
not yet.
Commissioner Moore, you look like you have a question.
Only because I'm trying to understand. So, I mean, most of the reasons why you said people are removed from the applicant pool is because they remove themselves.
Oh, no,
What are the,
I did not mean to indicate that. I
okay, so
apologize.
that's what I heard. I'm sorry.
Sorry, that was an example of when it happened after the letter of interest last year. It has also happened after an interview where the team just felt like this candidate was just not, they just didn't have, they just couldn't cut it. It has happened before at the contract parameters conversation when we sat down with someone and we said, look, this is a non-negotiable for us. And they said, we respect that and you should respect this is what we do and this is not going to work. And we said, okay. So it has happened at multiple stages.
So have we, one more time. So have we ever made a decision that the applicant that is submitting doesn't meet any of the gaps that we foresee in our programs, that we would need something different? You know what I'm saying? So we have identified that we have some level of education that we need within our district, because to fill a gap, because most of our kids have X, and we need to be able to instruct according to this manner. So have we turned people down because they don't meet our needs? And when we don't find anyone that meet our needs, what do we do?
We have turned people down because we thought they wouldn't meet our needs. We have never gotten to a place where we had a need but did not find a partner to fill that eventually. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Gore.
Thank you very much. I was kind of, I guess, on the same vein as Benita. Do you have a certain number of partners? And if so, how are the schools chosen for those partners to be able to work with that school?
You mean are we aiming to
Do you have
join
a
a certain number this year?
Yeah. Do you have a number?
No, ma'am.
You just take application.
We will accept any letter or application that comes in. We will vet them all rigorously and, obviously consider on a case-by-case basis. We're not trying to meet a certain quota, for example.
And then you fit them with the needs or a certain school, or how does that
So
to partner with?
on this, so I'll just use this slide as an example. It doesn't matter, it's the same in both timelines. So, as you know now, we have 3 individuals that would be interested in restarting a school should IPS say one needs to be restarted. Once we share what those schools are, then those partners will have the opportunity to submit specific to a school. So it may be that the folks we have in the pipeline at any time look at the schools that we recommend for restart and say, our model may not be a good fit for any schools, so we're not going to apply for this particular school. We'll apply for this one, or we won't pursue one of these. Or it may be that they look and they say, we feel like our model will be a good fit here, and here's the argument we can make for it. Does that answer your question? So they actually select to apply for our specific schools.
How it fit in, and did you make the choice or did they make the choice? How was it?
They apply specific, because we want partners to come to us knowing that they think they can make the needed change in that school. But then it's still up to us to decide if what they say is going to meet the needs, and then up to you, obviously, to approve that match in that contract.
Did you share the information with them? I'm sorry.
Yes, so we share when we announce if any school will be restarted publicly on the 25th. And what I did last year is then provide the applicants with just some basic information about the school, like what has been the historical performance of the school, what is the achievement gap between various subgroups, what is the SPED population, the EL population, what's the floor plan and the square footage, because they're thinking about all of these planning elements as well, and for some folks that's relevant. And then also would answer additional questions they have that would help them tailor their application to that school site. So for example, with Matchbook last year, who applied for Wendell Phillips School 63, they're a one-to-one school. They use a lot of technology, and so had all these very complicated questions about the bandwidth and the IT infrastructure within the school. We were able to provide them that data so then they could make sure that they could make a case for fitting in that school.
Thank you. Just trying to get a better
Sure,
understanding.
of course.
Commissioner Sullivan, then Commissioner Orr.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for a really clear and detailed response to kind of some of the ambiguity that the board had on this. And then also just kind of close the loop on one question that was brought up the last time as well, concerning the closing of the window for choice programs if parents in some of these schools would not be interested in the programs that would be coming as a restart. So just your thoughts on any solutions for that or
Sure.
partial solutions.
Yep. So we talked amongst our team, and I spoke with both Patrick in our Office of Enrollment and with Enroll-ND. I think that the sort of best advice we would have to offer right now, knowing we're still working out the kinks, is when the district shares information with families that their school may be recommended for a restart, we would also at that time share our available choice options and make sure they know that the first window closes then at the end of January. So they would still have several weeks to, if they wanted to, go into that first round lottery. If they receive a seat in that first round lottery, but ultimately decide to stay at their neighborhood school because they're pleased with either the partner we select or the school doesn't restart, whatever it may be, they can always choose to stay at the neighborhood school. In the event that someone doesn't pursue that option, there's still the second window, although I think we would encourage families to be very well informed and help get that information out during that first window.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
I'm going to ask myself, jump. So, and maybe I'm misunderstanding the process, notwithstanding the restart. So in the case where there's going to be a restart, they don't have to give up their current seat for a choice option. Where in the regular process, they would have to give up their current seat to exercise a choice option, right?
Let me make sure I understand your question. So
We're preserving seats in the case of a restart, where in the ordinary course of business, we're not preserving a seat.
no, it doesn't change that. So if a school is recommended for restart, the children in that building have an automatic seat there. I think what she's asking about is, you know, if a family was concerned that because of this change, they might want to exercise their choice elsewhere, they could still enter the first round choice lottery. They got a seat, hang on to it until they were sure, and then if they didn't want it anymore, relinquish that and return to the neighborhood seat.
And that's what I'm asking. So we're giving them a little broader latitude than we're giving people who.
It's the same. It would be the same lottery
Okay.
logic, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Arnold?
And maybe this will come as the groups are giving presentations. I understand that, you know, charter operators can apply for charters, and then it's their choice whether they choose to want the partnership in an innovation school. I get that piece. I mean, they don't have to have us if they have their charters. So they choose because that can be a good relationship and benefit both entities. I understand the restarts if a school is failing. I'm fuzzy on the conversion and what would be the motivation for a school. I understand it worked very well at Edison because it was a magnet school in Cold Springs, but for a traditional neighborhood school to want to become an innovation school, I'm a little fuzzy about what that motivation might be. Do they share that in their application, and can you share that with us?
Sure. So I will say, you know, I won't speak on behalf of any specific school because they haven't submitted their applications yet this year, and I also would want to leave that, you know, to them. But generally, when a school approaches us with interest, it's primarily around, you know, how they're able to use their people time, their money within their building, just even more flexibly, and what they see as better for the kids in their community than what they're currently able to do. Some examples of what we've seen of that are things like being able to start your day at a different time, so run a slightly longer school day. They would like more instructional time. Or nearly every one of our schools has done an early release day once a week so that they can have targeted professional development, let's say every Tuesday afternoon with their staff without students, you know, there. Those are things that currently we're not able to do within the traditional, quote unquote, IPS structure. Also things like modifying their calendar. So a lot of times we'll see those schools survey their staff around the things that we're also discussing now as a district is, you know, is 2 weeks for fall break and 2 weeks for spring break the best fit for what we see with our kiddos, what our families are telling us, and what we want as a staff, and then they have the nimbleness to make those changes. Those are some examples.
That's helpful, thank you.
Okay.
I think we're good.
Okay. So clicking on. So I did questions before this slide because this one is pretty straightforward. This is just a refresher of our charter partner selection process, which we are currently engaged in. As I mentioned last time I was here, we've already done a first round interview with the 5 applicants for this category, and they're here this evening to introduce themselves to you. We've done our formal applications, and then we'll be entering the process of doing any follow-up interviews to hopefully have agreements in place anytime before March, just kind of based on how we're able to work through all of those details. Any other questions there then before we pivot? All right, so it's a pretty hard pivot then, and change the tone a little bit. So as you can see here on the slide, these are the letters of interest that we received for the 2019 school year. And the 5 I've boxed there in red are our 5 charter partner applicants who are here this evening to do a brief introduction for you and answer any questions that you might have. I do want to note that there are 2 parties on that slide that also indicated they may be interested in being a restart applicant, but they're only here tonight to talk about the charter partner aspect, and so the sort of information that they have prepared is targeted in that way. Any questions on that? All right, so I'm just going to have Kip Indy come up first, and we'll move through our applicants. Andy?
Good evening. Pleasure to be here tonight. Thank you for having us. My name is Andy Seibert, and I serve as the Executive Director at Kip Indy Public Schools.
Hi, good evening. My name is David Spencer. I'll be the school leader for Kip Indy Legacy High.
Good evening. My name is Luke Lennon. I'll be the Assistant School Leader at Legacy High.
At Legacy High, we have 3 core pillars: college readiness, career exposure, and cultural consciousness. So we're going to dive more deeply into these in a moment, but a short overview is that college readiness, that is completely all about our curricular decisions. Cultural consciousness, that's about our programmatic decisions. And then as we think about career exposure, that is our intentional partnership with individuals and organizations within our community.
And so we are proud that our 2 current schools have been part of the IPS family of schools for 4 years now. So our elementary and middle school have been innovation schools since the 2015-2016 school year. We're 2 of the first innovation schools. And as David mentioned, our high school, a big part of the vision there is to be grounded fully in the community. Our 2 current schools resemble that and embody that as well. And so in terms of current impact and where we're at with our 2 current schools, kind of 3 specific categories of things we wanted to briefly touch on. 1 is enrollment, 2 is partnerships, and 3 is academic progress. From an enrollment standpoint, each of the 4 years we've been an innovation school, we've met or exceeded our enrollment targets. We've seen a stable and strong demand across all grade levels. And the thing that we've been really excited about is we've been able to really lay deep roots in partnership with our neighborhood along the way. Over half of our students come from the 46218 zip code, primarily our neighborhood, Martindale-Brightwood. 85% of our students come from Martindale-Brightwood and then adjacent neighborhoods to the east and the north. And so we kind of pride ourselves in being deeply rooted in the neighborhood from an enrollment perspective. From a partnership standpoint, one of the really great aspects of the IPS partnership in terms of being in the Julian D. Coleman building, it's given us an opportunity to really expand the number of partnerships that directly impact our students, our team, and our families on a daily basis. 2 things to highlight quickly there. Barato Brits here tonight, he signed up for public comment from the Edna Martin Christian Center. They are our biggest partner. Over the last several years, we've been able to expand and deepen our partnership with the Edna Martin Christian Center to include before and after care for our elementary students. This year, we launched after-school tutoring twice a week as part of the Edna Martin's 21st Century Learning Grant. And then we've also partnered with them around our high school. And so we're working with them on land adjacent to their Leadership and Legacy campus to build our new high school. And so we've been really thrilled about the depth of that partnership. And then our community council, which includes Edna Martin and many other neighborhood stakeholders, continues to inform and shape the direction of our two current schools, but partnerships as a whole has been a focus for sure. And then academic outcomes and progress has been exciting. We've built momentum over the last several years. Kip Indy College Prep Middle School, which serves just under 300 students right now, has received an A as a state grade for the last 3 years due to the tremendous academic growth. We have been growth only as part of that process. This year, the middle school for the 17-18 school year received 109 growth points, which is our high water mark since the middle school has been in existence. And so we see just a lot of momentum when it comes to academic growth from that perspective. We still have work to do in terms of absolute proficiency, but we did see a 7-point increase in math proficiency on the state test this year, 2% increase on ELA. So we see signs of progress and signs of momentum on that front. And then the elementary school has not yet had a state grade, but we see promising signs when it comes to iRead and NWEA math, and so we're excited about the progress. And so again, we are proud to have our two schools be part of the IPS family of schools, and excited what that means. I think the core question in what we've seen now is the longer students stay with us, the stronger that they're doing, which has been kind of a core part of why we're opening the high school and why we're so excited about the high school.
So I'm going to talk about our first 3 of our unique program offerings. I'll start with restorative practices and move clockwise down. So with our restorative practices, the first thing that we believe in to note is that those can't happen authentically without strong relationships, both between students and staff. So we've carved out the first part of every single day for our homeroom circles, where students are not only building relationships with each other, but with those homeroom teachers who will follow them from freshman to senior year. We're going to be modeling what those circles look like for staff during our summer PD and our weekly professional development as well. Who's having those conversations, what they look like, what they sound like, and what sort of the action steps or resolutions that come out of that are going to be tracked by our assistant school leader of culture. And just a note on the why here. At Legacy, we really, really believe that giving students consequences, really giving anyone consequences without deeply thinking or thinking thoughtfully about what the root causes behind those are, is not setting them up for success. We want our kids to adopt a mindset that harm can happen in a community or between individuals, but there's always an open door and light for people to heal and to come together and repair those relationships. We want that to be true at our school, certainly every single day, but we want that to be true for our students when they go to the college of their choice or the career of their choice. And we know that if they believe that and they enact that they'll be leaders in their communities when they leave us. The second unique offering is career exposure. Really, really excited that we've already been able to take prospective students who are 8th graders right now and will hopefully be our freshmen next year on 2 career visits already, one to Telamon and one to JP Morgan just this week. I was able to attend the Telamon visit, which was great. What they do is they basically create the cell phone towers that gives us all our signal on our phones. So our kids were able to walk around and see not only like the warehouse floor, speak to the warehouse like floor manager, but also then head in and see who's behind the computers for the quality assurance, and then who's in the boardroom, like who's actually leading that company, and having conversations with our students on the ride home about where they saw themselves, and just having an understanding of like what specific skill sets they could bring was really, really exciting. We believe that a big part, not all of it, but a big part of why people choose their career is in part exposure, right? What have you seen? Where have you imagined yourself? And so we're really, really excited that we've been able to give that to our 8th graders, and we'll be able to do that for the remainder of this year. Our juniors will have it sort of baked into their weekly schedule. On our early release day, they'll be out in the city doing what they were doing, or doing what we're doing right now, which is going out and visiting different places, getting exposed to different careers. And at the end of that year of sort of weekly travel, they're going to choose what did I like, and they're going to apply to an internship in between their junior and senior year. What that's going to let us do is not only on like college applications, a really substantial and significant piece of work experience for our kids to put down there, but also an understanding of what do I want to major in? What did I enjoy about that experience? What did I not like about that experience? So they're going into college having a sense of like, what do I want to do right from the beginning? Our final part here is our focus on collegiate habits and skills. Our third part here is focused on collegiate habits and skills. We really see this as 2 sides of the same house. One is like academics, and there's some pretty like normal but still foundational things here about how our students annotate in the text, how are they thinking about independently reading like their textbooks when they're in the library without a tutor next to them or without a teacher next to them? How are they using their notes in class? And there's also the more social side of the house, or those soft skills, right? So what's my time management look like? How should I be handling my midterms week, my junior and senior years of high school, and how will that help me when I'm in college? And just a note here as well, our students will be able to take advantage of our KIP through college program, which is going to help them have an understanding of what scholarship money is available to them, what colleges are the right match for them, so they're already set up for success once they get to the school of their choice.
With culturally conscious programming, what we want to be true is that our students are interacting with diverse texts that tell diverse stories from diverse authors. This is reflecting the opportunity our students have to take classes such as African American literature, which they'll take their freshman year. This is also incorporated into our morning meeting, advisory, as well as our whole school assemblies. Over the summer, we're interacting with teachers, having conversations around race, bias, and everything along those lines, in order to make sure our teachers are truly primed to have a huge impact inside the classroom. But this doesn't just stop over the summer. As we enter the school year, we continue to have these conversations. And last, during our students' junior and senior year, they actually complete capstone projects. These capstone projects consist of them researching, having a deep understanding of their ethnic background, really how does that impact the world today, and then the impact they can make as they graduate and go into college. Look at intensive intervention and remediation. We know that we have rigorous academic goals for our students, but you have to have the appropriate supports in place. So what that looks like at Legacy High is that we have a double block of math, providing opportunity to pre-teach some standards for our students so they can access the math lesson they'll receive that day. Looks like a modified block schedule for in our literacy component, where our students take a composition class as well as a literature class. What we also recognize is that our students might need additional support. So from there are truly intentional math small group instruction and guided reading instruction. For students who need additional intervention, we have overtime, which occurs after school, which provides even more targeted small group instructions for our students who need it most. The data that informs this are our interim assessments that occur quarterly that are aligned to the ACT. So what this means is that we're pulling math groups based off of data that we're seeing regularly. We're also pulling for our literacy block, where we're informing our literacy small groups from the SRI, Scholastic Reading Inventory, which is happening regularly, but we're looking at it quarterly to identify what students we're pulling in order for that true targeted intervention. And all of this is to make sure our students can access truly rigorous curriculum. That's reflected in our AP for All curriculum. So what research shows is that students who score a 3 or higher on their AP exam not only do better in college, but they're actually more likely to graduate. And that's what we want to be true for our students. So we know this is a truly audacious goal. We want to ensure that our students are taking AP classes in core content area by their junior and senior years. So what that means is that as they come in our door their freshman year, they're already taking pre-AP classes. So as they enter into college, now not only have they had a truly rigorous high school experience, but actually prepared to be competitive in college and beyond.
And so to quickly wrap us up, the question from Commissioner Arnold to Jamie earlier around, the different types of innovations and why they're, applying for innovation status. We received our charter from the mayor's office in June of 2017. We believe deeply in our partnership with IPS and really want our high school to be part of the IPS family of schools, as our two current schools are. And really it comes down to 3 reasons. One is neighborhood vision and impact. A big part of the reason why we're opening the high school is because we heard directly from our neighborhood, from residents, from neighborhood leaders, as part of the Near East quality of life planning process, that a high quality high school in Martindale Brightwood was a need. And so being responsive to that, but then also seeing the tremendous assets in the neighborhood, we think that there's a unique opportunity. And IPS is one of those tremendous assets. And so our hope is to work with IPS really in true partnership with the neighborhood for the long term. And so that's 1. 2 is K-12 alignment. We see a ton of efficiencies by having all of our schools, K-12, be part of the IPS family of schools, whether it's through transportation, through a partnership with the Innovation Office. We really want all of our schools to be on the same page, working together in concert. And so we really want the high school, in addition to our 2 current schools, to be part of that as well. And then transportation is the last thing. It's super important for our students and something we believe deeply in. 85% of our 800 current students ride the bus every day. It's something that we feel we need to offer. And so it's been a tremendous partnership. It's gotten better every year we've done it with IPS Transportation, with Manny, and the team. And so we're hoping to, as part of the partnership, offer our high schoolers that same opportunity. And so with that, we'll wrap up, and happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Arnold.
I understand and appreciate that K-12 alignment. Will your high school only be open to students that have come up through the other schools? Or will you be recruiting students from other areas? And if so, what does that look like? Understanding the fact that we've closed a lot of high schools and the population is small, what's the rationale for that, if other students? So tell me a little bit about where your students will be coming from.
Yeah, absolutely. So we want it to be a mix. Right now we have 120 eighth grade students. We certainly want as many of those 120 students on a yearly basis to come to our high school. We know right now we've got 393 high school age alumni that finished eighth grade at KIPP, and 2/3 of those 393 students are not going to an IPS high school. And so we think that there's great promise in matriculating as many of those 120 eighth graders every year. But with that said, we do want to open up additional seats for students that aren't KIPP eighth graders right now. And so our anticipation as part of the Enroll Indy process is to open up to 135 total seats. We have a goal of matriculating about 85% of our 120 students that are with us now. And so what we anticipate and hope is that, yes, we'll be matriculating a lot of our current eighth graders, but also have a not insignificant amount of seats for other students in the area that would be interested in coming to the school.
So do you add a grade? Do you start as freshmen and add a grade each year? Is that the
Yes, so
plan?
we'll start with just freshmen, ninth grade, add 1 grade level per year, similar to how we've done it with our elementary school over the last 4 years. And so in the 2022-2023 school year, we'll be full grown with 912.
Will you be recruiting students from outside the IPS district? I mean, will it be open to students that may want to come just because of the model that aren't currently IPS students?
Yeah, I think, our intention is to kind of extend the approach that we've taken with our 2 current schools as much as possible. And so as part of our innovation partnership with IPS right now, we do have geographic boundaries for the 4 zip codes where we get 85% of our students from. Almost all of those students are within IPS boundaries. We do have a number of students from the 46235 zip code on the far east side that captures some of Warren and Lawrence Township. And so, our hope is that our high school will largely resemble that geographic footprint as well. But right now we do get, a handful of students every year from outside of IPS boundaries. But our intention, again, first and foremost, is to be deeply grounded in the neighborhood. And so with that, want to kind of have a similar student population that we have right now from a geographic perspective.
I was just going to address the point that he raised earlier, that one of the levers, and we haven't discussed this, what this will look like for the high school that we have in the innovation model, is that you can set geographic boundaries, which is not the case if you were to operate as a charter authorized by the mayor's office or the state charter board without an innovation partnership. And I believe many innovation school partners have utilized that tool to be really targeted and specific around their enrollment, which I think has helped with focus on particular neighborhoods that may have been under-resourced or may have not had strong performance. And also it can be a resource for diversity as well.
Commissioner Moore, you had a question?
I do. I think I thought I heard you say that 2/3 of the children that graduate from KIPP do not go to IPS. I assume since you had that figure, you could tell me generally where they do go, because I remember when I visited your school at School 110. I'm sorry, I still do numbers. At School 110, that one of the things that they told me was that they follow the students after they graduate, so you could see, where the kids are going and help them through, getting ready for college. So I'm interested in where they are going if they're not going to IPS.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do, the Kid Through College program that Luke mentioned earlier is kind of our supplemental college counseling work. And so we do follow all of our students that finish with us in 8th grade. Our biggest kind of high school partners right now, we have, of those 393, we have students at 35 different high schools across the city, actually. But our biggest partners are Providence Cristo Rey High School and several of the township high schools, actually. So we have a number of students at Warren Central, at Lawrence Central, at North Central. We've had an emerging number of students over the past couple of years enroll at Shortridge, which has been great. But 2/3 of the students do, in fact, attend kind of high schools that are outside of the IPS school families.
So you said, so basically township
Families.
schools. I was just trying to make sure where they were going to private schools or,
Yeah.
okay, township.
Commissioner Gore.
Thank you very much for being here. I live in the Martindale-Brightwood area, and I do understand that we don't have a lot of high school students in that area. So if KIPP became a partner with IPS, would you be competing for our students, knowing that we just closed 3 high schools?
I mean, similar to what Annie was sharing just now, our goal is that a majority of our students do come from KIPP. So we have 120 8th graders that'll be matriculating to our high school, ideally. So that actually would cover a majority of the spots that we have. So a lot of what we're looking at is ensuring that those 2/3 who leave actually instead stay with us in the district and go to our high school.
So what would be the capacity of your high school?
So we have 120 students per grade level, so 120 for our 9th grade, which is equivalent to our 120 we have currently with our 8th grade. So at full capacity, we have 480 students.
So would your legacy high school be 9th through 12th or just 9th grade?
It's 9th through 12, sorry. So 9th grade is what we'll have next year. So we'll start only with 9th grade
Right.
and then build from there on. So we'd still be taking majority of our students from our current middle school, again, ensuring that our students, rather than going to township schools, are actually staying in the district.
But as you build, where would you be looking for your students?
So they would continue to come from our middle school, is the goal,
So every year you look for 120 or
that are coming straight from it, yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Moore, you asked my question.
All right, thank you. So next up, we have representatives from Purdue Polytechnic High School North.
Good evening, Commissioners and Dr. Farabee. It's my honor to stand before you today and speak on behalf of Purdue Polytechnic High School North. My name is Kiana Warren, and I will be the principal for the school. First, I want to talk about the mission and the vision of our school. We are really deeply dedicated to closing the opportunity gap, specifically for underrepresented minorities and for women, and we want to see them get a rich, hands-on, STEM-focused education that will prepare them for post-secondary options. Our vision basically is to make sure that we have a new generation of college and career-ready students who are deeply passionate about what they're studying and are ready for the future of work. Just to talk about a couple of results to date from our first school, we've had a really high retention rate both for staff and students, which is a great sign. We've seen some really great academic gains with our students as from looking at the PSAT scores for our 9th grade students. And we saw that all the students, even as we looked at subgroups for like different racial and ethnic groups, they were outscoring their peers nationally. So we're really excited. We're always looking at making sure that we're closing that opportunity gap. And lastly, we have some really great industry partners that worked with us last year, and they want to continue those partnerships with us going into this new school year. And we also had 8 new partners join us. Some of the things that set us apart is we will offer our students the opportunity to earn dual credits in industry-based certification. So coming right out of our school, they'll have tangible college credits, which in the end we know have numerous benefits, including saving them money as they enter college. And also they can earn industry-based certifications, so they could potentially come right out of our high school eligible for high-wage jobs for those students that college may not be the right choice for them right after school. We have a small group setting. At capacity, we'll have 600 students in our school, and we're looking to maintain a 15 to 17 student to teacher ratio, so keeping that pretty low for the students. We're always looking for staff that understands the importance of maintaining those relationships with students. From day one, our students get exposure to multiple career paths. They have an opportunity to work directly with mentors with our industry partners. At this point, we have over 200 professionals who have signed up to be mentors for our students, and that program is working well. Those students get an opportunity to go out and see what it can look like, real life career. So I always say in our high school, beyond just learning what chemistry is, you can actually go and see what a chemist does starting from your freshman year. One of the things that our students and parents often love to hear about is once you complete our program successfully, you get directly admitted into the Purdue Polytechnic Institute. We also offer personalized learning, and students really have agency of their learning through our design thinking process and challenges. So why innovation? One thing that's really deeply important to us, like I've alluded to before, is we want to make sure we have a very diverse student population. We want to make sure that we're keeping students in the IPS district. And then lastly, our first school is an innovation partner, and we'd like to see that continued. And so now we're happy to answer any questions you have.
Commissioner Moore.
I'm very happy that Purdue has become a partner with IPS, but I'm often concerned because I need to understand why we need to have two Purdue Polytech, one on the north side, one in central Indianapolis, considering the fact that we reduce the number of schools to make our schools more effective. We have more students in the school. They say that gives you a better quality of education. So I'm trying to understand why we need to have two. Why can't you just expand the number of students you have at your current location?
Hi, everybody. Scott Best, head of school. Happy to be here, and thanks to Gianna for taking the load for me tonight. Yeah, to your question, we want to make sure that our school, from a size standpoint, stays in that 500 to 600 range. We like that number from a sweet spot because of it provides the opportunity for every teacher in the school to know every student to know every teacher. As you start to scale up beyond that and you get into the 700, 800, 900,000 range, it just can't happen. There's just too many students in the school for everybody to have that kind of connection. The other piece of that is, again, as we look at geographic diversity, what we heard as we opened last year and then it continued this year, there were students who wanted to come to our school, but from a geographic perspective, it was difficult for them to get here. As you know, we use Indigo as our transportation partner, have from day one. They're awesome, but if you live in one of the townships and you want to come downtown, that is a hike. Certainly the red line and blue line and all that kind of will help that. But there are people who say, I just don't want my student to be on a bus for that long. And so having some geographic diversity really helps us attract a different set of students from not only the northern part of the Center Township, but also then heading up into Lawrence Township and Washington Township.
Commissioner Arnold.
So where do you see, understanding the same and kind of piggybacking on what Commissioner Moore asked about, where do you see your students coming from? Looking at, again, limited number, do you see them coming from out of the district? Do you see them coming from already IPS schools? And again, are you starting with 9th grade, the same model of going up?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So we'll start with 9th grade, same model, 150 students roughly in the 9th grade. You know, this is and I don't time to go off on a tangent. I believe so strongly in equity that when I look around this city, and obviously IPS gets a lot of attention, right, you guys are the biggest fish in the pond, and that's the way it goes. But we have some incredible inequity in schools that surround IPS. And I see students who are in those schools who essentially are attending a different high school than other students. And so as we looked at where we wanted to go for our second school, we wanted to go someplace where we could attract and make it easy for students who are in those schools where there are no other options other than paying money to go to a private school. We wanted to give them an option to have a high-quality high school to attend, where we are, as Kiana said, really trying to close that achievement gap and the opportunity gap and provide a high-quality education to every student, not just students who look one way.
And I do really appreciate the partnership with Purdue, and especially the opportunity for students to matriculate there. I think that's wonderful, especially for many of our students and children who would never have that opportunity. So
Thank you.
very much appreciate that.
At the current location, how many students do you have now? And breakdown freshman, sophomore class?
Yeah, we're about 260. We've got 140-ish sophomores, about 120 freshmen.
And the demographic breakdown of that is?
Yes, so it's interesting. So we are predominantly minority students. We're 62, 63% minority students, but there is no minority that's the majority. So we have, I think our largest subgroup is, give or take a percent or two, like 38, 39%, which is our African American students, followed pretty closely by our white students, then around 20% Latino. We have students who identify with more than one race, that's 8 or 9%, and then we have some Asian students. So it's this really interesting mix of students that where you walk into the school and there is no single group that dominates. It's a facet, which means, as Kiana pointed out, our students are doing hands-on projects, they're working in teams. So by default, they are working with people who don't look like them, who maybe don't come from the same socioeconomic background. Again, we're 62% free and reduced lunch. So majority low-income students, but not overwhelmingly that way. So everyone has to work with someone who is different than they are. And we think, not to pontificate in this day and age, that's a really good thing.
Commissioner Moore?
Do you anticipate the same demographics for your new school request?
Yes, we do anticipate a similar demographic breakdown, and we're really excited about that. And we are really intentional about our outreach, making sure that we are reaching out to some underserved communities specifically.
And as Dr. Farabee mentioned, one of the advantages of being an innovation school is you can draw those preference boundaries, and that really helps you hone in on these are the areas that we really want to target, both inside and outside of the district. And I think that's incredibly helpful. So you don't just have essentially not to enroll in these, not the greatest thing in the world, but if you don't have the ability to draw some of those attendance boundaries and preferences, it's almost random. And this way we can say specifically these students get preference, then everybody else kind of comes in for what's left.
So it's Purdue Polytech North. So is that like Northeast, Northwest, North Central?
That's a great question. We are, and with all joking aside, we are very, very close to be able to publicly announce it.
Mm-hmm.
It is north.
So probably North Central?
It's
not
up,
Northeast,
it's
not
up,
Northwest?
It is north.
Okay.
We are close.
I understand what that means. Thank you.
Commissioner Arnold?
Understanding with your current school, you use Indigo, and that's because you're kind of centrally located. Is there an issue with it being on the north? I mean, I know some communities are a little less public transportation friendly. So talk a little bit about that.
I think that's a really great question because you really can't close the equity gap and say that you're giving opportunity if students don't have a way to get there. So even in our facility search, that's always been at the forefront of our minds. The partnership with Indigo has been amazing, and we're looking to continue that. And so we've been very intentional about making sure that all our students can get to our school.
So you feel like Indigo will still be
Yes, it will still continue that partnership, yes.
And I meant to ask this of the KIP folks, but you have a charter from the mayor's office. Go ahead.
Yes, we received our charter last spring from the OEI mayor's office.
And it's not a question of whether you're building a Purdue Polytechnic North. It's a question of whether you're going to be an innovation partner with IPS.
That's correct.
And that's true of the KIPP school. Thank you. Wanted to get clarity there for, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so next we have representatives from Phelan Leadership Academies of Indiana.
Good evening. I'm actually here all by myself, so sorry. Mission and vision is pretty similar to every other school in the city, which is we're trying to prepare our children academically, socially, emotionally to take the world by storm and to fulfill their tremendous innate potential. The pieces I'd bring to attention here are nonprofit, obviously founded in 2013. We are blessed with the state letter grades to come out today. All 4 of our Indianapolis schools are A-rated. And I just couldn't be prouder of my scholars, my teachers, and my parents, or our parents, who put in all the work and effort to help us achieve those objectives. 2 of our schools are already in partnership with you, PLA at 93 and PLA at 103, and 2 of those schools are the schools that we're in discussion about. George and Veronica Phelan Leadership Academies on 23rd in Illinois, and James and Rosemary Phelan Leadership Academy out on 42nd and Midhofer. One of our promises when we started, and this is our 6th school year, but one of our promises when we started is after 5 years, we wanted to make sure that all of our scholars were outperforming the state average. We felt like if they were in that position, they really could go after any opportunities that they sought. And I'm very pleased to say that our only 5-year-old school, George and Veronica Phelan Leadership Academy, scholars are beating the state average in language arts and in math proficiency. On this slide, the only piece I'd draw your attention to is we really, because of our partnership with you, and particularly starting at School 103, have kind of pivoted. As a network, we now have 14 schools in our network, serving about 6,000 scholars here, Detroit, and Tampa. And we really said, hey, we want to get good at taking existing schools because we kind of felt that maybe Indianapolis, maybe some other communities didn't need more schools, but they just needed better schools for children. So I'd really describe us wholly as a turnaround operator. So we go into underperforming schools and really try to turn them into the places, both socially and emotionally and academically, that our children and families deserve. And I'm pleased to share that through our partnership with Project Restore, we've transformed already 5 F-rated schools into A-rated schools. And we did that all within 3 years of taking over as a partner. The elements of our program really, I don't think they're unique. I think they're the execution of best practices. So evidence-based, standards-aligned curriculum, strong teachers, weekly coaching for our teachers, Tier 2 tutoring for all of our scholars. We're really blessed that our scholars have had a wonderful range of experiences. Already our middle schoolers have gone on 3 college campus visits, so they can see, wait a second, I like Ball State, or maybe I liked IU better. So it's really given them a diversity of experience, and that's worked out well. The IU visit was on a homecoming game, so they wanted to know what all the red cups were, and so we had to kind of diverge them that they were not going to have any red cups, but other than that, they had a great experience. We also believe very firmly in partnerships, and so we've been blessed at our schools to have 2, I'll just highlight 2 partnerships. One is with a group nonprofit called STEMnasium, and STEMnasium is providing STEM learning as part of a rotation. So our scholars are getting that 2 or 3 times a week, the same way they'd get art, music, and physical education, and our scholars are loving it. Learning JavaScript, building an underwater robotics. Our all-girls team came in first place in the Indiana competition and is heading down to Ohio to continue. And these are all elementary school children who are going up against middle schoolers and high schoolers and really handing it to them. So we're very proud of that piece. And then we added this year, largely because of the violence on the Far East Side. Our middle school is on the Far East Side, James and Rosemary Phelan Leadership Academies. We've already had, unfortunately, 2 children shot who are at our school. They lived, but they've been shot. And that's just a regular occurrence, unfortunately, for many of our children. And so we originally said, oh, we're going to bring in these counselors, and our kids kind of looked at us funny, like, we're not going to sit and talk to strangers. And so we developed a partnership with another amazing organization called Young Actors Theater. And through the process of acting, through the process of writing their own plays, through the process of trying to figure out how a character would respond if X, Y, or Z happened, it's allowing our scholars more and more to express themselves, express emotion, and unfortunately express some of the trauma that they're exposed to on a regular basis. Why are we interested? I think it's a win-win-win for everybody. As I shared, we have two schools that are already in partnership with you. Our schools that would be joining you are A-rated. We'd be bringing 500 additional scholars into the district. I think it's a win for us because of the great services and that you provide that could help us better serve our children and our families. And I absolutely believe it's a win for the community and for our families when IPS, PLA, and the other great organizations you've heard from today are really working together on behalf of children and the community. Thank you.
Just for clarity, so we've got two, and you're looking just to bring the other three in under the innovation umbrella?
Two. So we have
three.
two, and you have two, and we have four total.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
No questions? Thank you so much for the time. Have a great night. Peace.
Thank you.
All right, so next up, we have Tinley Accelerated Schools.
Good evening. Earl must have done something right since he answered all the questions immediately. My name is Adam Horst, serve as the board chair for Tinley Accelerated Schools. Thank you for having us tonight. I'll have Ms. McGady introduce herself as well.
Good evening. My name is Erica McGady. I am the District Manager of Assessments in Early College.
Good evening. I'm Sandra Trusselt, and I'm the CFO of Tinley Accelerated Schools.
So thanks again for having us here this evening. We're happy to answer questions as we go through here. I think most people know who Tinley Accelerated Schools are, but just to go over that quickly, we believe that an accelerated model is a model that can work for all students, regardless of their background, regardless of what disadvantages they may have grown up with or what situation they've come from, and regardless of their past academic experience. And so really trying to put those right supports around our students and our learners to really get them to not only succeed in high school, but to actually get them ahead and to be able to succeed in an early college program. And so we really try to get that situation set up early on. And what you'll see is when our scholars graduate from high school, they usually graduate with about a year's worth of credit in college, which we've mentioned earlier this evening is such a huge boon to them, both economically as well as in terms of their chances for success in college. I won't read through every line here, but every one of our scholars who's graduated from our high schools since its inception has been accepted to a four-year college or university, an accredited four-year college or university. Our most recent class of 56 scholars received over 600 college acceptance letters and earned over $15 million in scholarship offers or aid awards from those different acceptances. We were a National Blue Ribbon school in 2010, which really tried to focus upon, and the reason that was awarded at the time was improved student achievement, but really focused upon disadvantaged students. You'll see from our recently released ISTEP pass rates, significant improvements from 17 to 18. So we're proud of our absolute scores, but even prouder of the growth that we've seen recently. And you'll see that in terms of our high school, they outperformed the state pass averages by 14.5% in math and 10% in English language. You'll also see, this is one of the real gems. I had to point to one of them on the page is the outperformance in terms of some of our children who are on free and reduced price lunch actually scoring better than our scholars who are on paid lunch. And so trying to shrink that achievement gap and make sure that we're targeting those students and having them overcome those achievement gaps that have existed historically. And then Tinley Genesis, which is one of our three elementary schools, really tremendous progress in the last year, 100% pass rate on the iRead and more than a 17% improvement in the ISTEP scores. We also didn't put it on all the slides, obviously just released, but 4 of our 6 schools received an A grade. 2 of them were C grades this past year. Those 2 that were C were 2 of our elementary schools that we believe are on the right trajectory now to move up. Going around here, and I think what's really at the heart in the middle, is that we believe every every child is worthy of and capable of gifted and exceptional work. And so we try to take that approach and that attitude with every single child, regardless of whatever they come to attend the school with. And so in the upper left kind of corner, you'll see some of those core concepts and core principles that we believe are just critical to our model. So extended hours, whether that be longer school days, weekends, small class size, that high quality instruction, the concept of putting really high quality teachers in front of our scholars, and then a code of conduct. So making sure that we're not just focusing on academics, but upon raising and educating people who will be successful in life and professionals as they move through their life career. The other 5 circles you'll see are touch upon our 5 different schools today. We did combine, you may have heard me mention before, 6 schools. We combined our 2 middle schools this past year. But starting at the top, so our high school really focuses on that early college. And with the University of Evansville, we have a unique partnership there. Going around further, Collegiate Academy, that is our middle school, really that scholastic focus, getting people ready to go on that path as they're trying to think about getting ready for college. And then the 3 others our 3 elementary schools have different focuses, one being a leadership focus, one being a STEM focus, and one being a music and fine arts focus. So why innovation? Why are we here? And I think it probably goes similar to what I think the other schools that have come before you have said today. But I think if I had to say it, in a nutshell, I think the landscape, and I hope most people would agree, I think the landscape has been one that has been maybe focused upon competition, but kind of without any sort of general semblance of how the whole thing fits together, right? So every one of our schools, whether you're an IPS school, whether you're an innovation school, or whether you're a charter school, we all have the same common goal. We're all trying to make lives better for our kids, and we all are responsible for a series of community assets. And I think we see, at least I see, within the community, a lot of underutilization of those assets. And we've had some discussion around that tonight. And so how do we best make sure that we are utilizing those assets, whether those are physical assets or human assets, et cetera, but how do we use those in the best possible way? And that really gets into the second point, which is we need to put dollars into the classroom. We're spending too much money. I'll speak just for Tinley. We spend too much money on debt, too much money on facilities, and we got to find better ways to make sure that we're putting dollars where the education is actually happening with our scholars. And so we don't benefit fully from the scale that we could. I've worked for my last 2 organizations I've worked for in my personal life, both had about 30,000 employees. Organizations of that size have scale, a lot of things that they can do that can bring benefits, and obviously IPS being the size that it is can bring some of those benefits that we believe that we can benefit from. And then I think the landscape has changed, over the past few years, and I think, at least to a degree, right, I think attitudes have changed, and I would say that on the side of Tinley, but also I think I see it on the side of IPS in terms of trying to figure out, again, how do we leverage these partnerships and relationships? So whether that's professional development, whether that's different things that we can bring into the classroom to learn from each other, we really want to take that spirit of partnership and understanding how can we best maximize those resources to do the best for our kids. So we're happy to answer any questions, and I've got the educators and smarter people behind me who can hopefully answer any questions you do have.
Commissioner Gore.
Good evening, and thank you for being here. Tinley Accelerated Schools. I know that you have several schools, so what schools are you looking into bringing as innovation schools?
Yeah, so we've submitted an application for all 5 of our schools, the high school, the middle school now that is a consolidated middle school, and the 3 elementary schools.
And number 2, we need to drive dollars in the classroom. So at this point, you feel that it would be better to be a part of IPS to utilize our dollars for your facilities?
No, I think there's opportunities. So let's say collective purchasing, right? My sense is there's opportunities there where IPS is able to buy things at a lower rate than what we're able to purchase on our own. Those are some of those opportunities that we want to explore jointly, where it's not that a win for one person is a loss for another. We currently have all of our own facilities, so we're not asking for an IPS facility. But I will say there are unused facilities, right? And we have capacity in some of our facilities. So those are all community assets. At the end of the day, right, how do we best leverage those? I'll say this, before the last few months, I'd never had a conversation, right, with IPS leadership or with others about how we could potentially do some of those things. Those conversations are happening now. And so how do we find those opportunities that could be wins? And how do we find those opportunities where it's not a win for one and a loss for another? So to make it clear, we have 5 schools today. We have about 1,400 scholars. We have our own buildings, but I think there are opportunities going forward. And I think maybe the last piece that I didn't say is I don't know what we don't know yet, right? So a few years from now, what other opportunities might exist that we could collaborate on? And I'd rather be at the table talking about them frequently than to not be talking about them.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Yeah, I just want to compliment you on everything you've just said, because in a nutshell, you've explained the whole rationale for the work that we're trying to do. So I won't be here to be voting on any of this, but I think your points about the smartness of collaboration for our entire community, most importantly for our kids, because the arguments we get into are usually arguments about adult stuff. They're not about kid stuff. And the things we hold in common are far greater than the things that divide us, and these are silly, silly fights that people want to have. So kudos to you for looking at that, and I hope that you will continue to look for additional ways to collaborate for all of our schools, for our whole community, for taxpayers, for citizens, and for children. Because I agree, we haven't begun to scratch the surface of smart ways we can collaborate for the best outcomes for all of us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Arnold.
Just tell me where your schools are located.
Yeah, absolutely. And I should have mentioned this earlier because I do believe it's really core to who we are. I wanted to make sure I didn't exceed my time limit. We started in the Meadows, and we are wholeheartedly committed to the Meadows in every possible fundamental way. So for those who've been in Indianapolis longer than I have, and I've been here for about 15 years, the old Cubs grocery store, that is our high school. We're right there next to the YMCA, right across from Avondale Meadows. And we believe so strongly in that neighborhood, and people who've been on our board and people who've served for Tinley have been very vested in that neighborhood. So that's our high school. One of our elementary schools and one of our middle schools are about a half a mile. It's not quite, kind of depends whether it's by driving or the way the bird flies, just nearby in the Meadows community as well. So 3 of our 5 schools are very densely organized there. We are predominantly, and when I say that, I mean 99% minority, 70+% free and reduced price lunch. So we believe strongly in that area, in that community. Our 2 other elementary schools, one is Tinley Genesis, which is near Ivy Tech on Fall Creek. That's kind of our western edge of our schools. And then the other is Tinley Summit, which is on the east side and in the Dewberry community. That was one where we actually moved into the old TC Steel, so IPS 96 building. And that was a big question for us because we were in essentially a leased space for several years. And when that came up and wasn't going to be renewed, we had to ask a question as a board and as a leadership team, why are we there, right? We started in the Meadows. Why are we in that community? And we believe so deeply that is one of our most underserved communities, that is just a moral imperative that we need to be in places where people need great educational outcomes and opportunities, and we need to do well for them. And so you'll see that those are the areas we're attracted to. We aren't following or trying to find locations where there's people who are already well served. We feel like we were in a very quick expansion mode for a long time. That has ceased. And we feel very much like now it's around how do we keep delivering great academic outcomes for our scholars.
Do your students primarily matriculate through your system, even the sort of the Fall Creek and the?
Yeah, a fair amount, but not. I wouldn't even say it's predominant. So our high school has at peak maybe had 260 scholars. We're below that today, and so we don't think that there's necessarily an unlimited desire, right, for people to come to the Tinley model, which is another point that I would make, which is I think one of the great things about the groups that are presented today, as well as what IPS is currently doing in a variety of ways, is let's provide a series of choices and options to families. And for some people, they might say the accelerated model with this heavy focus upon being college prepared isn't for their child, and that's fine. And we'd say that then we're not for you, right? That's our focus. And other people might have a model that's very much more appropriate for you. And so we see a fair amount of migration through our schools from the K to 12 or K to 8, K to 6 through, but not if you think about it just from our size. We have over about 900 kids in our elementary schools, but we only have 500 in our middle and high school. So we don't see a full transition. Part of that I think is kind of where our community is and where we serve.
And transportation systems,
We currently do not offer transportation. It's something we've talked about a lot, thought about a lot. We're in the middle of a strategic planning process, so having that discussion around, is that something that we need to reconsider? So currently we have people getting there by every which way, and so the fact that we're in the Meadows, we have a lot of people who live in that neighborhood and either get there by walking or by parents dropping them off or through other means.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
All right, so last but not least is the Invent Learning Hub team. Good evening, IPS Board and Dr. Fairby, and thank you for welcoming us back to IPS to share about this exciting new school model. My name is Alicia Osler, and I'm the founder of Invent Learning Hub. Just to share a little bit about my background, I know many of you. I spent 17 years in IPS as an educator. Taught grades 5 and 6 at Otis Brown School 20, at Eleanor Skillen School 34. I was the assistant principal at Eleanor Skillen School 34 and the founding principal at Super School 19 and was there for 8 years. If you add in the student teaching that I was able to do at Center for Inquiry in School 42, spent 20 plus years here in Indianapolis, so excited to be back and share more with you tonight. So our mission and vision, Invent Learning Hub promotes systemic change through design thinking, personalized learning, and post-secondary planning by providing students access to the future, and access represents our student attributes of agency, creativity, communication, empathy, stamina, and self-efficacy. We've spent time working with the Southeast community in Indianapolis to build out our school model. In the Southeast, less than 50% of our residents hold a high school diploma. This is why our goal is to instill the skill sets and mindsets that will allow students to be successful in the world and ensure that they are well informed about their post-secondary options prior to arriving at high school. As a first-generation high school and college graduate myself, I know well the unique challenges that our students are facing daily and the additional supports that they need to ensure success after high school.
Good evening, Commissioners, Dr. Farabee. I am Gabriel Surface. I am the Director of Curriculum and Instruction, also a former IPS employee, Assistant Principal at Ralph Waldo Emerson. And that takes us to point number one. Some of our results, because we're a single-site New Start charter, we don't have any current results, but under our leadership, Alicia took Super School 19 from a F to an A in only 2 years, turned that boundary school into a magnet that had a continuous, lengthy waiting list at 58, Ralph Waldo Emerson. This past year, we had 100 plus growth points and one of only a few schools that did not have a racial achievement gap. We were very proud of that. We were granted our OEI charter in June of 2018. We're a recipient of the CSP grant, the quality school programs, and we also had the highest score of all the 18 charter schools that applied. We have a strong Southeast community support with organizations such as SEND, the Southeast Neighborhood Development, the Southeast Community Services, and various other organizations, Twin Air Neighborhood Coalition, who has a meeting tonight where a lot of our people are. And we have a very diverse, talented board who has set us up for long-term success.
So I'd like to talk to you just a little bit about our school model. We have 3 academic pillars, which are design thinking, personalized learning, and pathways. At Invent Learning Hub, our students have a math and reading block. They have an extended school day, which allows for that design thinking block, where students complete community-based problem-solving challenges through the design thinking process. In this process, they solve problems by studying the needs of the community members, which builds empathy. So this system starts with humans first. What is the need in the community? And we design for that. Students also receive small group instruction in math and reading through our personalized learning program. Starting in 3rd grade, all students attend a pathways class twice a week. So we're backing up that model that would feed into the career-based high schools, so that we're starting in 3rd grade talking about those 16 career clusters, learning about what career pathways are high demand and high wage right here in Indianapolis, and then linking those to the careers, personal learning styles, and talents that these students want to pursue. So they leave us in 8th grade with an extensive pathways plan, and then we help them select a right fit high school.
Why innovation? I think a lot of our other schools that came up here earlier spoke to this very well. One for us that's strong is our history with IPS, and our leadership in IPS. We fully believe that a strong IPS is a strong Indianapolis, and we want to collaborate with the work that IPS is doing, and provide another opportunities for our students and families. They are and continue to be proud of what IPS is offering, and we want to be another model that those parents and students can be proud of. And with that, we'll take some questions.
Commissioner Arnold.
You're starting a school.
Yes.
Tell me, do you have a location? What's the grades? Are you starting? Give me a little overview.
Yes, our plan is to start K through 4 in the first year. The reason we decided to do that is because with the design thinking mindset, it is a little bit difficult to pull older students out of a traditional setting and then ask them to think in a very different way. We will grow a grade level per year until we're a K through 8 program. As far as location, we have been very committed to the Southeast community, working with Twin Air neighborhood. We just are very involved in that community, as I always have been. As I listed the schools that I've worked at, it's always been in that Southeast quadrant. We do have a school that we're pursuing a purchase agreement on right now. It's not solidified, but it is in that Southeast community.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that would conclude the content for this section unless commissioners have any further questions for me.
Commissioner Moore.
I just want to make sure that everyone, when they walk away from here, we all understand the same things. These schools already have a charter through the city, whether or not they become part of our innovation program, whether it's a current schools bringing these schools in, or the new school that we just discussed. They will start up in Indianapolis in the 2019 year, 1920 year, regardless. Am I correct?
You are correct. The only small modification is that the Phelan Leadership Academy's charter is with the Indiana State Charter Board, not the mayor's office. All the other schools are authorized by the mayor's office, either already in existence or will open in 2019, innovation or not. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
We do have public comments on this evening, so I think we'll move to the public comment section on this. I'll remind everybody the directions we gave earlier. You'll have 3 minutes. Please come up as Mr. Ramelsbacher calls your name and wrap up when the 3-minute timer is up.
Thank you, sir. For efficiency, I'll call 2 names at once if the second person could queue and be ready to comment. The first is Kristen Welker, followed by Tonya Evans. Since I don't see movement, I'll keep calling names. Jackie Thompson. Candace Kingma. Ms. Kingma will be followed by Karen Puffer, if present.
Good evening. I'm Candace Kingma, and I'm a parent of a 6th grade student at Edison School of the Arts. 2 years ago, I came before you a bit reluctant to support Edison becoming an innovation school, because the only information I had at that time were rumors and all sorts of so-called facts that you could find on the internet. But today, after our school has been an innovation school for a year, I am here to wholeheartedly and enthusiastically support the innovation concept. I had originally heard that the individual school boards would not take an interest in the school and would let the head of the school do whatever they wanted. But, oh my gosh, this is definitely not the case at Edison. We have a school board made up of subject matter experts who care deeply about our students, and they're committed to our school. They attend every school board meeting and many of our events. Our financial expert closely monitors our finances. Our PR expert has opened numerous doors for us. She's introduced us to television, radio, and print media. Just last week, there were 2 positive stories about us on Channel 6. And for your advantage, the headline across the bottom of the screen read, IPS students growing through unique programs. Remember, good press for Edison is good press for IPS. So it's a good partnership for Edison and the innovation schools as well as IPS. Our Henry Leck and Ernest Disney Britton are also on our school board. Henry is the founder of the Children's Choir, and Ernest works with India Arts Council. They are so strong in making sure that we stay committed to our arts focus. They guide us to partnerships, various performers, and other arts opportunities. As a result of keeping strong in our focus on the arts concept, we recently won the Artie Award for Excellence in Art Education, given by the India Arts Council. It's the first time it was awarded to a school. And again, it was across the screen and on all the publicity, it said this was an IPS school. As the president of the PTO and a parent, I'm in constant contact with the members of our school board. They ask for my input, respond to my concerns and suggestions. They interact with our staff and our students in the same way. So we just have an awesome board that they are always encouraging us and teaching us and making connections for us. I've said it before, because I've been before you before, and I'll say it again, that students who study art are 4 times more likely to be recognized for academic achievement and 3 times more likely to be awarded for attendance achievement. 3 minutes, as a result of being an innovation school, we've been able to completely integrate art into our classrooms. We can pick our own curriculum. Our teachers go to Washington, D.C.
If you could conclude, please.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
We have all sorts of achievements. We last year got $500,000 in grants. We have hundreds of volunteers who come to our school, and all of these successes are due to the fact that we're an innovation school. My message today is that our success would not have been possible without being an innovation school. So innovation done correctly, as it's being done at Edison, benefits everyone, the students, the teachers, the school, the community, as well as IPS.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Karen Puppers, followed by Ben Lado, if present.
Hi, I'm Karen Puffer with Purdue Polytechnic High School. I just came to speak on behalf of 3 of our students that couldn't make it today due to the weather. So first I'd like to read a statement from one of our students, Salma. She says, I like Purdue Polytechnic High School because whatever they teach me, I feel like I can use it in the real world. I'm a person who likes creating new friendships, and I feel like at school, even the teachers are my friends because I get to know the teachers and who they are. Purdue has helped me grow in different ways that I can't explain. Now there are days when I get stressed out and I just want to run away, but I always have my group of friends and my teachers that I can talk to. Second student, Sheridan. I like coming to PPHS because you can make your own schedule. They believe that everyone's learning pace is different. The teachers are flexible and you can make up almost any assignment or project in some form or another. Third student, Kai K. The teachers are so flexible all the time and very engaging and relational. There have been so many times when I just need to talk about stuff when everything is going wrong, and I really feel like I can talk to some of the teachers and get really good advice. They really care about the students, which I think sets PPHS apart by far. I only know of one other place like that, and it's a boarding school. I really appreciate everything I've gained from the teachers. And for myself, I'll be the instructional leader at Kiana Warren's second PPHS that'll be opening in the fall. And I'm just really blessed. I've gotten to work there for the past year and a half. And every day, like, I wake up excited to go and work with my team. Thank you.
Thank you. So Ben Lato is next, followed by Domini Martin Urban, if present.
Good evening, Ben Lato, Center Township employer, taxpayer, and Tinley board member. Here just to express my support for the innovation program. Tinley's application, I think Mr. Phelan put it very succinctly. This is a win-win-win for all of us in the sense of, from the taxpayer's perspective, I think for the students, most specifically, that where we can put the resources and the dollars in the classroom where it's most important in educating our youth. So thank you for all you guys do, and please consider our application.
After Ms. Martin Urban, we'll have Kathy Hankey, please. And if not present, Chrissy Smith will follow Ms. Hankey.
Hello, my name is Dominique Martin Urban, and I'm a Center Township resident and taxpayer. I actually live right behind the library, and so I have the privilege of seeing, there's a librarian in my building, and he works in an IPS school, and he talks about how much he loves his students, and that's just something, never mind, just something I really enjoy talking about with students all the time. But I am on the board of Tinley, and I work in economic development. My background is in workforce development and a particular focus on early in career, so internships, apprenticeships, and college prep, things like that. And I just want to put my support and ask you to consider allowing us to join the Innovation Network. I think it would be a symbiotic relationship, strengthening the offerings of IPS. And so I often get questions about, in economic development, what are our offerings here, the innovation that we're doing here in our schools, what does our talent pipeline look like? And I think that it would be a great way to combine forces, combine synergies, and continue in the making sure that we have something for every single child, whether that be vocational school, career and tech ed, whether that be, like George Washington has fantastic, programs for advanced manufacturing, or having opportunities Tinley can add to IPS and IPS can add to Tinley, and I think that would be a fantastic relationship to continue on with. And as a Center Township resident, I am very excited. I pass by Tinley Genesis all the time, and I would love to see us be part of the IPS family and continue offering excellent things for the residents of Minneapolis, and hopefully as our continued population growth in our county.
Kathy Hankey, if present. If not, Ms. Smith.
Good evening, board members. There are multiple issues with the Innovation Schools update tonight. The first part is about the charter partners. KIPP Indy Legacy High School will be a new high school, which means that there's no data about the program, and there's nothing on the website about potentially becoming an innovation school or on Enroll Indy. KIPP College Prep has a 69% suspension rate. Purdue Polytechnic Northside location. There's no data from the existing Purdue Poly High School, and the school isn't even full. IPS also closed Broad Ripple High School on the north side because there weren't enough students enrolled. So why open up another school on the north side supported by IPS if you already closed one? Tinley has an 82% suspension rate for grades 5 through 8. Invent Learning Hub would be a new school, so there are no other schools that they have, so there's no data on this program successful or not, and our children aren't guinea pigs. Conversion schools. Arlington Woods School 99 has an F from the state and federal level. There is also nothing on their website or calendar about discussion with family on innovation conversion. George Buck School 93. From the past two, they have an F from the state for the past 2 years and an F from the federal. Again, nothing on the website or calendar about discussion of innovation conversion with families. Stand for Children has also been given access to the parents at George Buck, so we know from historical things how Those parents are now being guided to become Innovation School. As leader of a parent engagement for IPS Community Coalition, I would love to have the ability to go to the school and meet with parents and give them information about advocating for their students, just like Stanford Children can. When we look at the Restart applicants, the path is a new charter school, so the model has no information on them. Again, our most vulnerable students are not guinea pigs. School communities are being left out of choosing of applicants and the matching process. There's no standard for the questionnaire that goes out to families or staff. Based on the questionnaires that I've seen and that I was given at Cold Spring, these are incredibly biased. So you need to have someone who is educated in producing non-biased questionnaires, produce a standard that's given from the district to all schools. The timelines that are being presented are very troubling. They give 3 months or less from the time that a Restart School is announced to when the board votes. This is not enough time. Enrollment through Enroll Indy is happening now. Families in IPS deserve to be able to make informed decisions about their child's education. Again, I'm calling for the IPS board to have a moratorium on all new innovation schools, including charter partners, conversion, and restarts until at least the 2021 school year. There's nowhere near enough time for proper family and community engagement with the timelines and guidelines that IPS currently has in place. The IPS board and administration continues to move forward with this timeline that all students at any new IPS innovation school need to be given a seat at any IPS school of their choosing, bypassing the enrollment lottery.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. If you could
This
please
board
conclude.
has time and time again identified the need for authentic family and community engagement. You now have the opportunity to back up your talk with action. Thank you.
Thank you. Barato Britt, if present. Final name on the list, Sunita Sales.
Hi, my name is Sunita Sales, and I'm a school teacher at Edison School of Performing Arts. And I've had the joy of sitting here and listening to everything going on. And and I'm talking about innovation, in my experience. I am a product of IPS. I entered in kindergarten, graduated from John Marshall High School. And if you had asked me 3 years ago, would I resign from IPS to work for innovations, I would have told you no. The concerns that you brought up, and I kept smiling back there about demographics, were all the concerns that I brought up too. I had been teaching 27 years at that point, and when Edison, School 70, decided they were going into innovations, my concerns were, what type of students are we going to have? Are we going to be inclusive? Are we still going to have diversity? And to the blessing, we do. The only difference, and it was funny when my administrator asked me to speak to tell the differences between IPS and innovation now, is that as far as my clientele, as far as the teachers, as far as the drive, as far as the love we have for the community and being a product of Center Township, it is there. You know, I would have never stayed if I had thought that I wasn't going to be working with the same people that I have worked with, the same students that I have worked with from the community that I grew up in. I would have stayed with IPS. But seeing that we were keeping the students that we were keeping, seeing that the diversity was still there, I still get my bad students. I still have my students with behavior problems. I have students on the autistic spectrum, and we service everyone. I have ESL students. And the best part of innovations, and especially at a performing arts school, is that my professional development is different. It was hard. I felt like I was going through a divorce when I had to sign the little contract saying that I was resigning from IPS. But until my administrator asked me to come here, I forgot I wasn't with IPS. And I think that was the beauty for me and innovation, is that I still am a part of the IPS family because I'm still servicing the people that I want to serve. I'm still in the community that I grew up in, that my parents When they spoke about Crispus Attucks, I had to smile because my 93-year-old daddy was talking about Crispus Attucks. So I'm a true supporter of innovations. 3 years ago, I would have looked at you and been like, that's like charter. But being a part of it and seeing all the things that are happening, how we are growing, how I've grown as a teacher through my professional development, I am here. And I have never spoken in front of the board, and to get me here is a miracle. So I must truly believe in it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment sign up for this evening, sir.
Is there any other further questions or comments from board members? Ready to move to the next subject matter.
The next report is a report on school performance presented tonight by Andrew Strope. And Andrew leads our Performance and Continuous Improvement Division. This update will include accountability update, and that update will include most recent data that was released on our accountability results as relates to grades for the 2018-19 school year. In addition to the letter grades, growth data was also released. And Andrew will close with an update on where we are with the school quality review process and those schools recommended for a school quality review.
Thank you, Dr. Farabee. Good evening, Commissioners. It's good to see you again tonight. As Dr. Farabee mentioned, I'm going to start by speaking about the state letter grade, the 8F letter grades, which the embargo was released yesterday. And so I'm sure you've seen a lot of the information coming out related to that. And so just kind of a brief overview of what we'll be touching on. I'll give a brief history of the IDOE, Student-Centered Accountability, just some high-level details about how that grade is calculated with growth and how the final grade is calculated, and then we'll look at some district and school results. One of the things that I do want to note is that what we are focused on right now is the state letter grade. As you probably know, and as we've spoken about before, 2 letter grades were released yesterday, 1 state, 1 federal. And so right now, for this evening, we're focused on the state letter grade for multiple reasons. But what you're going to see also here is almost identical to what was presented to you last year, as the IDOE Student-Centered Accountability Framework has not changed over the last 3 years. And so again, I'll just give you a brief overview of how these grades have been calculated, and then we will look at some results. So this is the history of the Student-Centered Accountability. So I'll let you kind of read that there. One of the important things that I will note is that the 2015-16 school year was the first school year that the current IDOE accountability model was used with the current ISTEP test. This current school year, 18-19, we will transition to iLearn, but what we're talking about right now is 17-18, which we used the ISTEP test as well. So when we look at trend data, we will look at 15-16, 16-17, and 17-18. And at a very high level, so the details of the 8F grade calculation for the state, I think this is a really good slide just to represent what is all included in that calculation. Obviously, it can get very nitty-gritty. You can get into the nuts and bolts. But for tonight, we'll kind of zoom out a little bit and focus on what's most important. So what you see here are 3 different configurations, elementary, middle, and high schools, and then the domains within each one of those configurations. So performance and growth for elementary, that is the same for middle, and then for high school, performance, growth, and then a multiple measures category. And what we'll do now is we'll dive into each one of those specific domains. But you can see the percentages there, so that is what the state, that's the weight that they place on the data that comes out of performance or growth or multiple measures. So again, the only difference really is at the high school level where the multiple measures domain is weighted at 60%. So to dive into the performance domain, it is made up of 2 different pieces. One is participation, which is essentially the percentage of eligible students who are going to count, essentially. And then proficiency calculation, so that is the percentage passing, did not pass the exam. One of the important things to note about proficiency as it relates to the 8F letter grade model is it focuses on students that are enrolled for 162 days or more at the school level. So that is a difference between the proficiency numbers that come out a couple months ago. Those are include all students that have been in a school for an entire year, where the A to F focuses specifically on 162. So that is their performance frame there. So multiple measures. So again, this is just at the high school level, and this is weighted at 60% for our high schools. It is encompassing of two different calculations. One is the graduation indicator, which is a combination of the 4-year graduation rate. And then you get a little bit of extra bump if you can show the difference between the 5-year graduation rate and the 4-year graduation rate. So that graduation indicator is made up of both of those. And then the college and career readiness indicator, which is the percentage of graduating cohort with passing score on the AP exam, IB exam, dual credit, and/or industry certification. And a key point there is students can only count once toward that calculation. So they could fall, one student could fall and meet multiple ones of, they could meet industry certification and dual credit, but they would just count once. So that's the multiple measures category for high schools.
And Andrew, do you recall how many total points you can earn for CCR?
Yes, I can get that here. So I have a lot of numbers in my head over the past couple of days. I want to make sure that I'm being clear. So yeah, you can earn a total of 100 points for CCR.
So 100 is the maximum.
100 is maximum. Yep. Yep, and then so growth. So this is a component of all three configurations. And just at a very high level, growth is determined by whether each student is on track to catch up, keep up, or move up in math and ELA. So for students who were non-proficient in the prior year, points are awarded for helping students move towards proficiency. And then for students who are proficient or highly proficient in the prior year, points are awarded for students who stay at the same proficiency level or increase their proficiency level. So the state has a growth model that is on their public website that you can dive into if you'd like, that it can walk you through how growth points are calculated. But that is it at a high level. And so for K to 8, these are just the main components of that growth calculation. There's the individual student growth, which is where that growth model comes into play. So individual students are awarded growth points. And then they're placed in either the top 75% or bottom 25% of their peers in their school and in their class. Those scores are averaged out where you then come out to a final overall growth score. And again, this gets very detailed, but this is at a high level what is represented in growth at the K to 8 level. And then at high school, it is the same with the exception of the 4th bullet point there, where there is a grade improvement component in ELA and math. So our 10th graders take the I-Step 10. All 10th graders do. And then if they do not pass as a 10th grader, they can retake it as an 11th grader. They can retake it as a 12th grader. And so if they do not pass in 10th grade, but let's say they pass in 11th grade, then you are awarded some additional points for that. So that's an important point to know there for high school. And then all of that is essentially summed up, and each domain is weighted, and the scores are added to create an overall final score. And then the score is then converted into the letter grade based on the scale that you see on the right-hand side there. All right, so now to dive into district results a little bit. So you see the table here. And there are a few key talking points there that you can read, and I'll kind of go through each one. So the IPS Corporation letter grade has remained flat over time. The overall points grade has increased over the past 3 years, and the corporation growth in grades 4 to 8, as well as 10 to 12, has also increased. And that asterisk that's there, so that is representative of, even though the embargo was released, our corporation letter grade is technically still preliminary. Now we can release it, so we can absolutely release that publicly, but it is preliminary due to 3 individual schools within our corporation that submitted appeals requests to the State Board of Education. And you can submit those for a number of reasons, but essentially that is a school-based decision where if they believe that the letter grade doesn't align with the data that they have at the building level, then they can submit an audit. And that goes to the State Board of Education, and that can take a little bit of time to play out. And so as of right now, we have 3 schools who their letter grades are still pending. So as we hear back from the state on the determination of those 3 letter grades, obviously that could have an impact on our corporation letter grade. So you could see that go up a little bit, but we wanted to make sure that we shared with you what it is right now, because that process for the audit could take a little bit of time, and so we didn't want to wait multiple months to share this information with you, but that is why that asterisk is there. There are multiple other school corporations in the state of Indiana that their corporation grades are also preliminary due to the same thing. And then here are the school results. So this is just a stacked bar graph that is showing the percentage of schools year over year, with 2015-16 at the bottom, and then moving up there to 2017-18. So this is, for example, 2017-18, we had 33% of our IPS schools, and that is inclusive of innovation, both in LEA and non-LEA, who received an F. And so then, the bar graph goes up from there. The 3 schools that did have their preliminary grades, so that's still pending, their current grades are included in this as well. But I think this gives you a pretty good idea of the corporation as a whole, and you can look at this over time. So I think this is a very interesting graph. All right, so I'll stop here. Happy to answer any questions on this. And then, like Dr. Farabee said, once we finish with questions here, then I can start talking about the SQR. One of the things I do want to note as a former math teacher, from pedagogy perspective, not utilizing best practice, because if you actually want to know how to deep dive into calculating the state letter grade, you kind of have to sit down and do it and walk a student all the way through. So I'd be more than happy. It would make the math teacher and me very, very happy to sit down with you if you ever wanted to do so, and I could take you all the way through all the nuts and bolts of the state letter grade. But that is how it happens at a very high level.
I have a question about the corporation growth grades 10 through 12. Actually both, but what makes up the sort of, particularly in the 79.4 to 94.2, what do you think is representative of that growth number? I mean, what are we doing that has caused that growth number to increase from 74.9 to 94.2?
Yeah, I think Ms. Franklin was here and spoke earlier about a lot of exciting things happening at her school. So I think that is a really, really important number to call out in that growth, especially given a lot of the transformation that happened last year into this year. So we are very excited about it. I'll probably let Alicia Johnson or Dr. Farabee kind of speak to specifics about, what things have been done at the academic level to speak to that growth.
Yeah, I'll start briefly, and then Alicia can provide additional context. If you unpack the 4 through 8, you'll see that a lot of that is in the middle grades. And what I believe has happened most recently is the ability to have a staff that's focused on middle grade students that is completely separate than that of high school students is a bet that we made a couple years ago that I think is starting to bear fruit, and we hope that that continues to be reflected in our data. But at the time, commissioners be reminded, we worry a lot that having one staff that would be supporting 2 groups that are in completely different places. I think everybody on the board have raised teenagers and preteens. Zach, your day is coming. The life and experience of a 13-year-old and a 14-year-old is very different of a 17-year-old and an 18-year-old, and we just did not see the ability to provide those level of supports accordingly, and so I think that is one of the reasons that we're starting to see, I think, some growth, particularly at the middle grades and then at the high school level.
The only thing I'd add to that is some of the things that have been fully put in place that Principal Franklin talked about, such as Freshman Academy. That was something she piloted last year. And so some of those initiatives, I think we benefited, even though we were going through that transition, that they took hold, and we were able to see some of the benefits of those pilots happening. So Freshman Academy is one I can name that she piloted. Obviously, some of the work she was doing in health sciences, the Health Sciences Academy was already existing. Similarly to, for instance, the IB program that already existed at Shortridge. So I think we were just able to see, one, because we were able to focus in on the high school experience specifically, adding in some of the freshman support to our schools, and then just the the actual program and the teaching happening in those programs paying off and showing up in our outcomes.
Any other questions? Thank you.
So the second portion of this includes an update on school quality review. We'll focus in on those schools that are recommended for review based upon the recent results that were released.
Yep, so as Dr. Farah said, again, we're going to focus on the school quality review. So I'll go through the SQR purposes, the process. We'll take a look at the 18-19 SQR and again who those schools are, and then I'll provide a brief summary at the end. Alicia Johnson and Dr. LeGrand first shared this information with you related to the purposes and processes about a year and a half ago, so I'm excited to come back and update you on where we are, as this is a process that, that I very much believe in. So again, the objective is to update you all on the process and then name the schools that will be receiving the review this year. So the purpose of the SQR is to provide a common understanding of quality and the effectiveness across schools, to foster dialogue between a school and central services around that quality and effectiveness, to supply school and district leaders with qualitative data collected from teachers, school leaders, parents, students, and community members, and then to support district decisions on interventions and supports, restarts, closures, and expansion. And as someone who facilitated the SQR process last year, I can say that that second bullet point, the fostering dialogue between school and central office, was something that was really exciting for us. A lot of really great conversations and great outcomes came from these reviews that we had last year. And so we're excited to do this again. So diving a little bit deeper, comprehensive school visit, it's just a one-day visit for each school, includes stakeholder interviews with school leadership, teachers and staff, community partners, students and families. It is attended by a cross-functional internal district team that also includes an IPS principal. SQR visits will take place this year through late November and then throughout the month of December. And then the culmination of all that is each school will receive a comprehensive report, including areas of celebrations and areas of opportunity. And so just to dive a little bit deeper into the site visit and what's actually included, there's a school effectiveness rubric, which identifies standards and related indicators of a quality school. And that is used as a foundation for all of the evidence that is gathered while we're on the site visit, the conversations we have with focus groups, when we do the rounds in the classrooms, that is all based on the school effectiveness rubric. That was something that was built utilizing a lot of research across the nation, as there are a lot of districts and states that utilize processes that are similar to an SQR. There's a walkthrough tool that is lined with the rubric. So as our team is going into classrooms, we utilize a common tool, and then what that allows us to do is have consistent messaging across the board. And then I think one of the most exciting pieces of this are the interviews, where we actually get to sit down and have a conversation with school leadership, teachers, staff, parents, students, and community partners. And so that's definitely one of the highlights of the process. And all those questions, again, are aligned to the rubric. They're similar across the board. That way we're comparing apples to apples as we go through the site visits. And then the school quality report is what comes out at the end, and it summarizes celebrations and areas for improvement. And what we do at the end of a site visit is we triangulate a lot of that data and have a lot of great conversation, and that information is put in that report and then shared with the school leader. So how are they selected? So this has not changed from last year. So how we as IPS select schools for SQR is schools first go through the first lens, number one there, which we look at the bottom quartile of proficiency scores. And what that asterisk represents is it is based on the most recent 17-18 ISTEP data. That is a change. You heard Jamie talk about this earlier, a change that we made from prior year is we wanted to make sure we're utilizing the most relevant data. And so that is what we use this year. And so of the schools that are in the bottom quartile proficiency, we then take the bottom half of those with growth, and that leaves us with about 7 schools. And so as the, now through November, let me actually look. Looks like the version wasn't uploaded that actually has the schools on it. So I can keep going and give you a quick timeline. of what's going to happen relative to the schools between now and January. So now through the end of November, we'll name the schools. So that's what we'll be doing tonight once we get the slide up and running that are eligible. We have conducted meetings with school leadership team, and then they'll be conducting those with staff to share information regarding the SQO processes. And then we'll be informing school communities via letters, open houses, and/or school events. So last year I went to multiple school events and open houses and shared information about the school quality review process. And then the end of November through December, we will actually complete the SQRs at every school. So again, we'll get started on those pretty quick here. And then in January, we'll share the findings with the IPS with you all to make appropriate recommendations.
Yeah, so Andrew, you may want to hit the summary, and then we'll have the slide loaded that includes the schools that are recommended for the SQR, so be sure that we capture those schools.
Great. Yep, so in summary, we do believe it is important to consider multiple measures when assessing school performance. So I just got done talking about I-STEP scores and related to math and ELA, but as we've had multiple conversations in the past about, obviously that's not everything that makes up a quality school, and so the ability to get in a school and actually look and see what's happening on the ground, and assess culture, have conversations with people, that is just such a big component of what happens in schools. We proactively engage in determining and implementing interventions and supports for low-performing schools. So again, as we are determining what those supports and interventions might be, we do not want to rely solely on quantitative data for that. So the SQR provides some great qualitative data. And the key point there at the bottom again, provide contextual and qualitative data to better inform our decisions and recommendations as we move forward.
So again, this is a reminder, commissioners, that as we think about intervention or acceleration and how we support schools, we don't just consider the quantitative data from the accountability model, but we also consider this as a means of getting a deeper look into their strategy and their performance and capacity to determine how we can best support the school in improving student outcomes. So I think, Andrew, you may have the updated deck. You may want to fast forward to the slide that has the schools that have been identified for the SQR process.
Yep, there we go. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we will now talk about these schools that met the criteria to receive an SQR from IPS for the current school year. So Stephen Foster, School 67, Eleanor Skillen, Thomas Gregg, Ignite Achievement Academy, Condesi Academy, James Russell Lowell, School 51, and Lewis B. Russell, School 48. Again, that's who met the IPS mark with a proficiency in growth. It is also important to note that the state also performs SQRs. Their gate is a little bit different, so they perform reviews based on schools that have received 2 consecutive Fs. So we've been working very closely with the state, as they actually were embedded with us a little bit last year on some of our SQRs, and they, based on their mark, will be performing SQRs through the fall as well. And so here are the schools that the state will be performing SQRs for. The one thing I'll note here is the similar school across both is Stephen Foster. So Alicia and I have been in conversation with the state to ensure that we don't duplicate efforts there, and so we make best use of time for everyone in that school community. But yeah, open for any questions.
Commissioner Core.
I was just thinking, what kind of support have you given to those schools since your interviews and since your walkthrough? Have there been support put in the schools to help those principals or teachers with what you found was needed for them to improve?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a central tenet of what should come out of this process, right? And so I actually had a conversation with one of our school supervisors who's here tonight about some of the exciting things that they're doing at one of the SQR schools from last year. And so she shared with me some very, very specific information about some areas for improvement that were uncovered based on an SQR last year, and then how they've been embedded in the school improvement process and school improvement plan for the school for this current school year. and it was very specific supports around PLCs, or professional learning communities, which are how teacher teams essentially organize in the building level to break down data and to talk about their students, et cetera. And so there's some best practices for PLCs that our team has been able to share and assist with this particular school. Again, that was something that came directly from an SQR process last year. The school leader has been, more than willing to have support in the building related to that, and to my knowledge, things are going really well. But again, one of the things we try to do is take tenants from the SQR report and actually embed them in the school planning process for the next school year. That way, it is relevant.
When you're working with one of the schools that gets identified for the SQR process, how often is someone in a support function trying to help the school? How often are they in and out of that school?
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have academic team members across the board that are in and out of these schools multiple times, daily, right? So yeah, I think it's important to note that this SQR is not it's not in isolation. That's the only way that we're gonna, determine how we support schools. That is the central work of, essentially of central office and of our academic team. And so we have school supervisors that, supervise specific buildings and organize supports related to special education, ELL, et cetera, for buildings, and they're in constant contact, and it's expectation that our school supervisors are in buildings pretty much every day, which they are, so they're constantly running around. So yeah, this is not an isolated event.
Commissioner Sullivan?
Yeah, so is that also true for the innovation schools as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's a little different for innovation. Yeah, so I'm glad you called that out, Commissioner Sullivan. So on this list, this is representative of both NLEA and IPS run schools, as well as non-LEA innovation schools, as we look at the umbrella when making the calculation for SQR. And so related to innovation, the supports look a little bit different. So we may not be on the ground there supporting on a daily basis. And so, as we go in and do a school quality review, what we're really relying on there is our partnership and the relationship with these buildings. And we've had great conversations thus far. And so what we'll do is we'll provide this report, and it's kind of a take it or leave it. But I can highlight one specific school. Imadonin last year was an SQR school, their innovation. We had some great conversation there and a really good site visit that, in my mind, helped foster and continue to build that relationship.
Commissioner Sullivan, the one thing I would add to what Andrew shared is we are aware when there are partners who are supporting those schools and able to learn from them, what areas are they focusing on in those things. So while we aren't the ones directly providing the support, we're in contact with those partners who are.
Commissioner Moore, you had a...
I did, but I think, I guess I was surprised to see these two schools, innovation schools, on the list. But I think it does provide our community with insight that we take seriously the quality of the education that our children are receiving. If I remember correctly, the innovation schools have something like 5 years to prove themselves. Is that right? So normally when I see this list, we're talking about if we don't feel comfortable, then they start for restart and all that. Am I not correct, or I am correct, right? So I guess my question is, if this school falls back on this list again in the next year, or they don't provide us with a correction action plan that is sufficient, then does that trigger that piece of our contract that says that they're not the quality of school that we want for our children, and then we move out? Or what does it do? I'm not happy to see it, but at least I want people to know that we take seriously what we say about quality schools, and everybody's included in the package. So I'm just trying to understand what this really means to me.
Yeah,
Sure.
I think, go ahead.
I was going to say, as it relates to innovation schools, there's language in each of those agreements that says if the school performs from a state designation in the bottom two categories, so right now that would be a D or an F for 3 consecutive years, then the board has the option to terminate that agreement based on lack of academic performance. So that stipulation is in those agreements.
So it says for 3 consecutive years.
Yep, I will check to make sure it says consecutive, but I'm 99% sure that's what the language says.
Okay.
Yeah, just I want to provide additional context. So you mentioned how schools got to restart. In some cases, for a recommendation for a restart, some schools have been beyond, 3 consecutive years of F before we made a decision to make a recommendation for restart. But I think the goal of this process is to help identify opportunities for improvement. There have been, so this is not the first time, I believe, in Madonna, you mentioned earlier, was on the list, and they had significant growth this school year, and I think they may have been in the top 10 as we look at growth scores, above 100. So that is the goal, is to try to identify strategy and opportunity for improvement for the school, and we hope that this deep dive, whether we're doing it, whether the Indiana Department of Ed is doing it, or another partner is supporting them, the goal is to get to better student performance. Because, ultimately, we are thinking about a restart, and the school's already had a restart, then that's more change, and oftentimes that creates instability that is not always helpful. And so the goal, again, I just want to continue to reiterate, is to ensure that we can help these schools improve their performance as we hold them accountable for improving their performance.
Yeah, and I'll actually add to that, Dr. Farabee, I think that's a great point. A majority of the schools that we did an SQR for last year are not on this list. So I think that speaks to the improvement, right? And that SQR is designed as a school improvement strategy. And as a matter of fact, a few of the schools from last year had some of the highest growth that we saw in the district. So we're very excited about that.
And you recall, there have been times that when we've had to make a recommendation for restart, where there have been, 4 or 5 years of consecutive Fs, the criticism often at that time is, we just let these schools fail and we didn't do anything to help them. And I think this is a clear example of our commitment to helping drive improvement in these schools where we see there's lack of performance. And looking at it from two lenses, again, these are schools that not only didn't perform well proficiency-wise, but also didn't perform well growth-wise. And so if you're at the bottom of the list, growth and proficiency, we just don't believe that's a place where we can see excellence, and the goal is to try to support them and move in the right direction.
Mr. Gore, you had another question?
I was just concerned about those two schools. Do they not have their own board? And what is that board's responsibility to them before we come in? To the innovation schools.
Yes,
Talking
each of
about
the innovation
Ignite
schools
and
have a nonprofit board. If you'll recall, that does exist for all three of them. Correct. So they are, in addition to us doing this SQR process, that board is also responsible for sort of monitoring and paying attention to the academic performance of the school.
Do you work with their board at all, or share any information? How does that work? I mean, I know the boards are there, but...
Sure. I'll ask Jamie to speak more specifically to that.
Jamie, come forward. One reminder to, as we talk about the 3 schools that may have a nonprofit board as well, that Elder Diggs and Joyce Kilmer were restarts as a result of having at least maybe 4 or 5 years of consecutive Fs. So those are schools where we recommended a restart previously in hopes of a new learning model providing opportunities for improved student achievement.
So I believe the specific question was, are we in contact with their boards?
Yes.
Is that correct? We
I know
are.
they all have boards.
Yeah, I will say it looks a little differently depending on if the school is also authorized as a charter versus if, like Thomas Gregg, they're an innovation network school that doesn't have a charter. So in that instance, with an NLEA, that's a non-charter innovation school, we're in more contact with their board. We do attempt to attend a majority of those board meetings, and we're developing processes and systems to make sure that we monitor that more closely. For the schools that also have a charter with the mayor's office, they attend those boards meetings, and then we're in collaboration with the mayor's office together monitoring the progress of those schools and talking about their governance and their board.
So they would be the first level, and then if things came about, we would be the ones that would make the final
I
decision.
believe,
I know
yes,
that.
in the broadest sense, yes. I think this is an example of somewhere where this is where our partnership is coming off the paper in a way, right? So they may not have already performed this exact kind of, process in their school, but this is an example where they are a part of our network and part of our IPS family, so they're a part of this process as well.
I know this was said earlier, but compelled to provide a reminder that whether we're addressing James Russell Lowell or Lewis B. Russell or Ignite Academy at Elder Diggs or Thomas Gregg Neighborhood School, we have the same expectation for student performance for all of our schools.
Any further questions? Commissioner Arnold?
So some of these schools just came online as the school they are this past academic year.
Yes, that's correct in the case of Ignite Achievement Academy, restarting at Elder Diggs School 42, and then Thomas Gregg made their conversion. Yes, that was their first year
Thomas Gregg
after
is the one that's
having
on the Near
converted.
East side,
Correct.
correct?
Mm-hmm. For Condesi Academy, they're in their second, this is after their second academic year.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Commissioners, at this time we will transition to action items for the evening. There are no action items in section 7 for unfinished business. There are 2 action items in new business, which includes item 8.01 and item 8.02. There's a recommendation in item 8.01 for commissioners to consider the proposed calendar for the 2019-20 school year that was discussed at our agenda review session. We will continue to monitor the implementation of the calendar should be approved as presented and continue to get feedback from students, parents, and teachers and staff. It's important to note that this recommendation has received several touch points of feedback from a survey and also a collaborative conversation with stakeholder groups. The administration is recommending that commissioners approve the proposed calendar for the 2019-20 school year as presented.
I would only make one addition that, so we're also approving at the same time the board calendar for the 2019-20. So do I have a motion to approve the school year 2019-2020 calendar and the 2019 board calendar?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
The next item, 8.02, includes a number of policy adjustments to be in alignment with current policy as relates to state and federal law and also implementation of strategy currently in the district. This is an effort to continue to consolidate policy. Reminder that we started in our Human Resource Division, as many of our policies are in that department. This is not an urgent request from commissioners, so commissioners may choose to allow these policies to sit during our waiting period, but we're recommending that commissioners approve the recommended changes for policy as presented.
And we will take action on those policies at the December 20th board meeting, so we do not have action on those.
This is one where they stay on the table.
Yes.
And those are all the items for action.
We're at item 9, closing comments. Does any commissioner wish to offer closing comments? I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. Be safe. Hopefully we won't have any more ice anytime soon.
Yes, sir. We will communicate with families on the makeup day for today as soon as possible.
Any closing comments from?
As we all shared in gratitude on Tuesday evening. Want to say again that we're really grateful to our communities, the voters, and the supporters of Indianapolis Public Schools to have a wide margin of approval for referenda in the district, and we look forward to sharing with the community how those resources will be allocated to better support our students and families.
Our next meeting will be our agenda review session on Tuesday, December 18th, beginning at 6 p.m. in this room. Having completed all the items on the agenda, this meeting stands adjourned.